息が吸いたくて産声を上げて生きづらくなってまた泣いてわめいて生きたくてわけわかんないな僕は死にたくても死にたくして歌詞になって歌う今日だ目に映って気づいたんだよ
音楽の価値なんて所詮主観だと
なら歌いたいように伝えたい言葉を伝う
間違いに怯えて塞ぐんじゃなくて
正しくあろうってあがいていたいんだよ僕のせいも僕のせいがバカにされたって僕は傷ついては傷つけて歌詞を作っていけ目に見えた今が全てだから過去や未来にすがりたくないから心臓よ動け動け
確からとしても僕のこと
僕の目を確かに照らしている可視化してくんだこの心を
でたらめな本音を抱えながら
息が吸いたくて産声を上げて生きづらくなってまた泣いてわめいて
生きたく
ってわけわかんないな僕は
死にたくても
死にたくして歌詞になって歌う消えたくて生きた今日があるなら
どちらも嘘にはしなくていいから真の
歌え希望も騎士も僕のこと
Hello? Are you guys here? I should have brought my pillow here. Okay, but we are live. Hello everyone. As usual. Good evening to those at the east side of the world and good afternoon to those at the west side of the world. Welcome to the stream. As you can see, everything is very holiday-ish because, well, we are arriving in December. December is here, which means Christmas is just around the corner. Or Hanukkah. depending on what your religion is. But well, I guess this is an early Christmas present for me. I guess. Okay, that's agreed. Okay, well, welcome to the stream, especially those in the chat. Welcome, Golden Boy, Sterling Channel, and also Monkey as usual. So, a funny story. If you noticed yesterday, this stream was supposed to happen yesterday. So I was already prepared. I already set it on my desk. I already set everything up. And then, but around that time when I finished setting it up, it's like 9:30, like 20:30, like that, like 8:30. So I decided like, you know what? I'm gonna shut my eyes for a little bit, just for 30 minutes. That 30 minutes turned into 3 hours. As usual. Yeah, what happened usually here? So note to self, don't go to sleep before stream happens, because you will get it. Okay, I'm gonna do a little mic check first before we're gonna continue. So wait for a second, okay? Okay, so I got my pillow ready. I got my mic ready, got my snack ready, and now we can actually start the stream. So, if you can see from the title, this is a kind of special Christmas, like a Christmas special stream, where I decided, and whether or not this would be like a stupid idea or not, but I decided to make a game in just 12 streams. Well, okay, I guess I owe you guys a backstory, so let's see how to explain. I started making games around 2018, if I remember correctly. Maybe around 2018, maybe. And it was for like a game jam. So in 2 months we decided we're gonna have to make a game. And honestly, that game that I made the first time is honestly the peakest I can do. Never. After that, I never make something as good as that. Well, technically, me and my brother, we were one team. So, and recently, I did join a couple more of this event, like game jam. But usually, I'm gonna be with my brother. There is one time that I do it alone. Yeah, but that is not necessary. So the latest one. Hi, good evening, Celine. Welcome back. Okay. So the latest game jam that I joined is maybe earlier this year. I I think, if I remember correctly, yes. Earlier this year, I joined another game jam. And it's actually a pretty special game jam, which we have to make a game in just 1 week. And actually, this is the game jam that I joined in. Is actually my very first, like, not very first, like my earliest stream. So this is making a game on stream is not the first, it won't be the first time for me if I ever decided to make a game on stream, because I did that last time. Well, last time it's more like mapping and coding, but now I want to try again. And this time I kind of want to involve chat here. Well, whoever is coming. So for today, we're gonna be doing a little bit brainstorming of, what kind of game should we make? Yeah. Is it going to be action? Is it going to be a romance? Is it going to be a comedy? Will it be based on a book? A story? I don't know. Oh. So I will be taking you to the next channel to see my Google Doc, which has barely a thing actually. Hold on, let me check. Also, do you like my sprite? It's very red and white. Even I even made a different hairstyle. This is like a limited card that you can only get on this Christmas event. After that, it won't return again. Yeah, anyway. There I am. Okay, so... Okay, let's just zoom in again. Well, actually, no. Let me just make it bigger. Oh, this is Romeo and Cinderella. Okay. Actually, I kind of want to share the link of this stream to my friend on Discord. Hold on, let me share it. Like I doubt they will come, but who knows? Okay, so this will be what we're gonna be doing. So making game is just 12 streams before Christmas Day. I kind of have a personal rule for this. At least, usually when you join a game jam, there will be like some rules that you're gonna need to do. Those rules can be, you are not allowed to, what is it called? I don't remember. Like, you're not allowed to code until this date. Before that, you are allowed to create anything, create any asset. You're allowed to get all of the song that you need. You are allowed to design a character. You're allowed to write a script, like that. The only thing that you can do in just 1 month, the official 1 month of the event, is the coding, mapping, everything that involving programming. You're only allowed to do it at the exact month of the event. But before that, you are allowed to prepare yourself, like that. Okay, I'm gonna do a little bit another mic check first, just to be sure. Like, is it good if I use pillow or not? I guess it's fine so far. Okay, so for this one, I do, okay, as I said, I want to set a personal rule. Okay, let's see. Let me just pop out my, so I can see the document while also looking at chat. Hey, making game is just a stream thing. So for the first rule, and this is for all of you as well, chat. So I guess the first is that I'm only going to be doing the coding. So coding and mapping are only allowed on stream. Coding and mapping on stream. So yeah, so basically the main programming, I'm gonna need to do it only on stream. Considering we have 12 stream, well, technically now we only have 11. So we're gonna have to well, consider our schedule. So usually when I do coding, it will take a lot. Like if I want to push it further, I can eventually do it like in just 3 days if I want to. But considering I still have a job, no, I do not. Okay, technically maybe like when my winter break, like Christmas holiday, I think it's like after 17th. So maybe if I want to do like push fully on the coding, I want it to be like at very, very close to Christmas, and I don't really want that because I am going to be very tired. I'm pretty drained from my job, honestly. I haven't like earlier before the stream, I'm like checking my my student what is it called, last latest test. Technically I'm already finished, but I just need to do final checking. I'm see what if I can save anyone basically. But then I'm gonna be eating. I'm gonna do this while eating. Okay? Hope you don't mind. Okay, I need to. For me. Okay, I guess the second rule related to the next one. What? Asset collecting or making can be done outside of stream, but I need at the very least instead of stream, but I will be showing, but must show result on show full result on stream, or at the very least highlight. Highlight like fix. Yeah. Okay, so basically I can be doing anything, basically collecting. I can collect the song, the character, making the full script outside of stream, but I must show the full result later on stream, basically. Or if I do have time, when we've decided to like the scheduling, we will be like, I can have one day dedicated just for character designing, basically like that. What else do I need? Okay, I guess the personal, because okay, technically I am a hit. Okay, I'm gonna explain it. I'm gonna explain it when with time comes, but it's gonna be a head-up game. For those who don't know, I've been making head-up games since. I made a couple of head-up games since 2018. As I said earlier, the first time I make a game is actually a fan game for the manga anime Hatalia Access Power. Okay. So it's only natural if I'm gonna be making a Heta game again. I do have a lot of ideas that unfortunately I never get to make during my time in Heta gaming. Okay, what else? What other rules that we have? Chat, if you have any like suggestion, please tell me. I'm just trying to look. What's the usual rule during game jam? I actually don't remember. Like, I guess be kind to other people. This is like a solo project, so there won't be anyone there. Right? Okay, why is my phone so slow? I cannot even open this phone. Okay, for time, maybe this will be the only role that we can do actually. Yeah, I guess usually it's just like no, not there for work, with other like be respectful to other, no politics. I'm definitely not gonna make politics still game. That would be stupid. Well, not stupid. It's more like I myself not good at politics. Why would I make politics? I don't know what else to do. So maybe temporarily we're gonna just make it. Okay. Okay, so temporarily gonna be like, so now let's actually start brainstorming again. Okay, it's kind of embarrassing. Honestly, this is. I made this string to be brave. Why am I embarrassed now? Okay, so I do have a couple of ideas usually when there are okay. How about like this? I'm gonna just write down the ideas that I have for really old what's it called, game jam back then. So let's just write previous idea. Oh, this one is for later. This one is for later. Oh, how I wish I could get a mic stand for Christmas. But nobody knows that I stream, so I won't be getting that. But why do you make it this when I can make it like the title? Hold on. Personal. Okay, now it turned ugly. It's ugly. Okay, previous idea. I'm just gonna list it down. Okay, let me try to remember. Tsuki sucks at remembering. Okay, so previous idea. I should show you. Okay, so backstory. The latest game jam that I joined. Well, actually, don't remember. Is it part of the 1 week one, or maybe what is it called? During early year, I think. Yeah, early year, my laptop broke down, and I was in the middle of making something. And it is okay. It's embarrassing, but I'm just gonna. Can you see it? Okay, hold on. Oh, I'm gonna sneeze. Hey. I really hope I don't get a cold from this. Oh, you cannot see it. Wait, you can see it. You can. Oh god. Oh no, okay, this is not important, not this one. Oh no. Okay, everything seems look fine. Okay. So, before my laptop broke down, I decided to make a game. After that, because after that, I actually dropped out of the game jam. And the game is... the game is based on Dream SMP. I was very into Dream SMP back then, but now it was like I barely interact with. Like, I know they had lore stream, like check manifold did a lore stream, but Dream SMP kind of being a hot mess, mostly because of the content creator, and not. Okay, technically the story is also a hot mess, but that is the story for another time. So it was going to be a big thing. It was going to be a very big thing. I actually have it. So here's the thing. The idea for this is actually just a retelling of Dream SMP, and actually my attempt of like trying to make it better, not making it better. It's more like how to adapt it basically in a more coherent form. Like I want it to. I guess back then I wanted to end like in season 2, so there won't be any season 3. So no Wilbur resurrection, no Tom's death. But I do want Last Nevada song, but that is done. So I decided to just look through the wiki and see what are the characters there, and I actually collected all. And that is not the silliest part. So I collected all to the Dream SMP character, and then try, because this is also a Heta. Again, this is a Heta game, so I connect it so per character who will fit who like that. And you know what the craziest part is? I nearly here's the game. I was making this so there's gonna be like a face set, a bust like that for each character. I actually almost finished it before my laptop broke down. So there are in total. There are actually, I don't remember how many, but it's more than 20. It's more than 20 characters in that I planned, at least for the first, until the Lamenberg War, Manberg-Wactopia War. I already planned 20 characters, and I actually already designed more than half of it. I made the sprite, I made the costume. The costume actually is easy to be pasted on Project Sekai, because it was also my hyperfixation. And then imagine it, you made 20 characters. You design everything. You made it one by one on. You made it one by one on Gacha Club, and then you decided to cut it so it will fit. And then you lost everything. It was really traumatizing, honestly, for me. And after that, and after I got a new laptop, I just don't want to touch this again. I made more than 20. Like, there are some character who has multiple clothes. That means I need to like make more. 20 character, like possibly 60 if you include the alternate clothes. I was insane, and I think I made it all the sprite of the bus. I made it in like a couple of days before my laptop broke down. And I didn't save it. Like the most regretful part of it is I do not back it up. I was so sad. Yeah. I don't want to touch it anymore. But maybe it's time to return to it. Well, if I'm gonna return to it, I want it to be like, again, Dream SMP is really a hot mess, but it has good ideas, at least back then. So I'm just gonna write Dream SMP now. Not a literal, it's not going to be like a pure retelling of Dream SMP, but maybe just adaptation. Oh, actually, there's one. There is a choose your own adventure of Dream a fan YouTube interaction thing. Choose your own adventure style. If I ever want to make something out of Dream SMP, it will probably be basing on that. But again, I still need the backstory, which is the canon, quote unquote canon of Dream SMP. So that is one. That is one of the idea. The second idea is actually still in the same file. Not this. I don't think you can see it. Okay, this is even harder to PC. But I don't remember around the time to have I already. Then I actually don't remember what this is. Like, I remember vaguely about it. Wait, who's Netherlands supposed to be again? What are you? Okay. So the basic idea for this one, okay, let me just zoom in. I'm just going to show you this one. I wish I know how to name it. So basically, this is a fantasy, a classic fantasy owl. It's actually based on a fan fiction actually. But around that time, when I was making this, I actually just want to like copy paste the old dialogue, but I then watched H Bomber Kai video of a plagiarism, and I was like, nah, we're gonna have to change the dialogue. And it's actually become harder because the game that I was want to make is very heavily inspired by the fic. And if I want to change everything, it would be really tough. But if I ever want to pick it up, then that. So it's just gonna say classic fantasy. How do you spell fantasy? Okay. Classic fantasy. Okay, so if I remember correctly, the story that I was planning to do is once upon a time there was going to be a kingdom, and the kingdom there is ruled by a very the classic evil king, who decided to like evil king stuff. You don't know that. Now the kingdom has its own special lines called the Lilium. No, Gladius. Gladio. Wait, how do you spell it? Do I still have the script? I actually don't. Gladiolus. Okay. So the Knight of Gladiolus consists of, if I'm gonna use the name here. Oh my god, I don't remember the name. I don't remember. Oh my god. Name? Okay, this is insane. How can I not remember? Lipon? I don't know. So I'm just gonna use the regular name. So there are Veronique. So the knights consist of Veronique, Ludwig, Natalia, and the newest one, Elisabetta. Originally, there's gonna be three musketeers, but then you can add one more. Now, there's a traitor among them, and it's kind of easy to know. So basically, it's just like a classic rebellion story, like a bunch of rebels helping chaos, but in an attempt to gain the attention of the king, essentially. The reason why, okay, I already told you the biggest reason of I did not pick this up again is because, again, I'm very afraid of the plagiarism, and if I ever gonna pick it up, I need a new story, essentially. Yeah, like that. Okay. Okay, let me remember another thing. Like, around this time, my hyperfixation is really Project Sekai, so I just am gonna thought I'll write down just Pivot Pet Squad inspired. Yeah. So during my obsession of Project Sekai, there's one group called Pivot Pet Squad, and this group has the biggest potential of okay, I thought there's some video. So the group Pivot Pet Squad is a group where honestly I do suggest you to go. So a group of 4 people, everyone has their own problem. One has a not great relationship with his father. One has inferiority complex. One is honestly the main character, and the other one is doesn't know that wait, inferiority complex. I never realized that. Yeah. So there's 2 ideas for this one. One, I'm gonna make it like a classic rhythm game, and 2 is I'm gonna make it like an SAO RPG thing. The SAO RPG thing, the only thing that's holding me back is that I'm really bad at making stats. I'm really bad at actually making, what is it called? Creeping? Not like status effect, skill. I'm not really good at that. I usually gave it all, I push it out to my brother, honestly. But now now my brother's in Malaysia, so I was like, I cannot just call him and just, dude, make me a game like that. On the other side, the rhythm game. Okay, here's the thing. The story that I do want to try it. It's actually gonna be bad. The only one thing holding me back is because I have a game similar to it. I already made a rhythm game. It just feels redundant if I make another rhythm game. Like, Unless in music line is shit, but still. I really I don't think I want to make another rhythm game again. Again, if I'm gonna make a rhythm game, it's just gonna be like a Project Tekka with Hetalia character, which is not what I want. I want to make it like original. So maybe we can just make it an RPG if you have. Hey. Oh, okay, what other idea can we think about? To be fair, I still have that Archangel Hitaria thing. Oh, wait, I don't know. Okay, Isekai to Mapindo. Okay, here's the thing. I remember the moment I got this idea. Again, it was based on a fanfiction. It's not technically based on a fanfiction. It's more like based on an anime, Hamefura. So, the story is, so the character Emil. So I have the character. The character is going to be Emil. Emil got sucked into his brother's book, and he become like a regular NPC. However, because of his interference, his fate is now tied to the essentially three important characters. Tua, Raditya, and also his name. Why am I forgetful? What is his name? Juan? Yeah, Juan. The name is Juan. Yeah. So, Tua, Juan, and also Raditya, which the three of them will have different tales. One of them is going to be a villain. So essentially, in the future, they're going to be a villain. And then one of them is going to be like the knight that will capture the villain, and the other has its own murder mystery plot. It's a man. But sometimes, because this is a Vocaloid soundtrack, I was like, I need to stop and think, maybe do you have to hear this one? Okay. Yeah, essentially the base like that. It's going to be like a very epic, not epic, it's more like a continuous. Okay, it's actually going to be, okay, the heavy inspiration again for this is actually the Fire Emblem Three Houses thing. Fire Emblem Three Houses. So, Emil is going to be pilot, and then the Juan, Tua, and also Raditya is gonna be the three houses. The thing. I don't know. I never played Three Houses, okay? Which actually brings us to Mario is Rabbids. Okay, this is actually very funny. So Mario X Rapid Dimensional Hopping. Okay, this is actually very funny. So I don't know if you guys know Mario and Rabbids. So basically, Mario and Rabbids is just Mario character meets bunch of these weird ass rabbits, and they just trying to save this one rabbit friend who is basically merging everything. Or in the game, they try to save Rosalina. I want that to be an isekai thing. So my idea is having two brothers that is not like a minor character in Italia. Two brothers or just someone related, and then they just being thrown into an isekai. Basically, they're gonna start in Mushroom Kingdom where it becomes very chaotic, and then from the Mushroom Kingdom, they're gonna be jumping through various dimensions. I kind of want that one, but at the same time, I don't like mapping, and I have to think of various mapping. I hate it. Hate it so much. Oh well. Oh well. What else? I guess I can write it down also. Wait, I have one more idea. Yeah. Okay. So it's one of the Chinese drama that I only watched once at the beginning and the end. And I barely remember what happened in the middle, but I was so invested. I need to rewatch it. So basically, it tells of an assassin who decided to retire because he doesn't want to be assassinating anyone. However, when he backed out, he is now cursed, and essentially he's dying. So during as he was wasting away, he meets with this very handsome fellow, who is essentially not the main I would say main antagonist, but not the main bad guy like that. Yeah, essentially the antagonistic force, like one of the antagonist force. Yeah. Also, there's this kid who is an heir of a family, but his family got out and killed, and then they go there, and then they go traveling here. It's a found family. I actually make a design for it, but I don't remember. I know I share it in my Discord, in the Heta Game Discord group, but I don't remember which one. Wait, have I ever made a model juicer out for Heta? No, I haven't made a model. I do have Bungo to Alchemist out. Okay. Alchemist, okay. So again, related. So Bungo to Alchemist Owl for this is essentially I would say it's like Limbus company. So it's actually honestly like Limbus company. Limbus company, ever after high, Twisted Wonderland. Or maybe I just say fairy tale inspired. So essentially, this Bungo to Alchemist is the character that we know. All of the characters here are stuck in a story, and the only way for them to get out is to give the story a proper ending. So, for example, the character Arthur. So Arthur is from England. So he is connected to the story that, in my mind, I have a Sherlock Holmes story essentially. Meanwhile, Ludwig is from German. He is tied to the Brothers Grimm story and also the story of Faust. the character Ivan is from Russia. Russia, technically, they're not connected to a story, but instead they're connected to the ballet. The Nutcracker has one leg, and then you have Gupta. Gupta is from Egypt, and he's actually tied to the Egyptian mythology, like that. So basically, fairy tale mythology inspired, right? The only thing holding me back from making that is the huge research I need to do, and I don't think I have the time. At least for now. Technically, I also have the Archangel. Now, Archangel Italia, my very first idea of the cave, where I gave everyone a correspondent angel. I don't know what I'm gonna do. Technically, I also have the Four Seasons Narnia as. Like, if I ever want to make a Narnia, yeah, if I were ever gonna make a Narnia, it's gonna be like Alfred, Matthew, Veronique, and also Peter. Veronique doesn't suit to be Edmund. Edmund is more like an Alfred thing. I'm gonna write that down. Me can say the Narnia. That would be so cool. Like, actually, this. Wait, I also have like Germanose. Yeah, actually, these two might be the strongest candidate. Like, for the casting, these two has the strongest candidate because I know I just fill in the template. The plot is the one that we don't know yet. So, what should we do, Chad? I just don't know what should I do. Like, okay, remote control. What should we do? I mean, I think we can just try to think of the story. Maybe I'm just gonna write down. Oh, here's the thing. I still have work to do. Like, I can't just leave you here and just gonna do some work there. But at the same time, it would be rude. So how about I put you? I give you like the two what is it called? What am I gonna put on you? Like, I can put you this put on a Disney movie for idea, or I can put on like Brenda Sanderson's song. No, what should I do? Yeah, it's only an hour. Oh well. Okay, I'm trying to think something. Like, I don't know if I'm gonna write anything just yet again, but I'm gonna try to think of something, and then when I figure out that, I'm gonna write it down. Okay? Yeah, I wonder what. Actually, while you here, let me put on. Actually, let's do the 2-frame channel instead. I don't remember how to do it. Okay. No. Okay. Okay, I have an idea. So. What should I put you on while we wait? Hmm. Oh wait, that is not the right lyric. How about I put you some TND, like TND, Reddit. Well, I think sounds good. Well, not technically good, not good. I should have planned this stream instead of going over bunga. Okay. I don't want to. Okay, actually, okay. Let's put on crit crap. Give me 1 sec. Maybe if we listen to some TND story, we can get some ideas. Okay. Too big, yeah. Okay, I thought the song was with PNG Baby. I don't think this is anything. Ah, okay. Okay, I'm just gonna put you on the D&D horror story, and then if we can get, maybe hopefully we can get a new idea for it. Then put it here, and then you're gonna put. Okay, I hope you don't mind. I'm gonna try to think. I usually gonna think while listening to other telling story in the behind. So let's watch some D&D. Does it have any full collection? That's weird. The only reason I put it on this chat because I do not want to bore you. I'm sorry. I tell you, I'm not really good at
Hello,
this.
Crit Crab here to do something a little different this time. Today I was going to go through r/RPG horror stories and I found this little gem and I knew I had to make a video about it. So
Again,
without further ado, here's the post.
on this
So this
is
was from a few years ago
this
when
is
I was at
old person.
university. I played with a group of people for about a year when the incident happened. We had a weekly meetup and we were a really strong group that was really into the game and it was a great
Who knows? Yeah, so I'm gonna put it. I don't want to bore you with me writing down. At least yesterday I can like fully to it, like translating the song. But for this one, it's gonna take a lot of thinking for me. So I'm just gonna put you something cool while we wait. Okay? I hope you guys don't mind. This is like the worst stream ever. So sorry. We just don't have any idea. Okay, maybe I should turn off my mic just in case that you
Right now, pop culture and media is filled with
Nah.
sarcastic meta humor, fourth wall breaking, and irony. It's the flavor of the last decade or so. But what happens when a D&D player tries to imitate it in-game,
Yeah.
only for it to suck? But first, a
Okay, I'm
message from
gonna try to
today's
think of
sponsor,
something.
Display. You know, in all our days reading stories on the beach, we never really decorated much, did we? Hey, Shell, let's get some decorations. Impressive, very nice. Let's see Shell's home decoration. Huh. Look at that subtle gloss finish, the tasteful metallic design. Oh god, it even has magnetic mounting. Actually, I'll be right back. Yeah, can this video be sponsored by Displate? Nice. What does the audience need to know? There are how many pop culture collections postering everything from movies, video games, and anime? They're magnet mounted and don't need any tools to set up? Just use code CritCrab at checkout? Easy. Alright, I have a story to tell now. Roll post. I wrote a D&D campaign. It wasn't the most original, but neither was that guy's character. At the dawn of Session 0, we discussed everything that's expected of a D&D game. I explained the
Why
premise
like
and the
this? Every
players
time I open
unveiled
it,
their
like in the
characters.
short
They
form.
all seemed perfectly normal. All except Rick Poole. If you read into that name, you know exactly what his character's about. At the beginning, his character was introduced as fairly normal. He introduced his character as an intelligence-based artificer. His backstory was simply that he's a tortured
I know her
too
name is
smart
Lupin,
for his
right?
own good. One of his gadgets killed his parents, and he was
Yeah,
adopted by
well,
an
maybe
evil
one day I need
criminal
to finish this one.
organization who used his young brain to build weapons. He eventually built himself a way out and uses his skills to survive a life of crime. This seemed
where is it?
perfectly fine when I approved it, but he played quite differently in-game. When the campaign began, their characters spent the first session learning their mission that would span the entire campaign. Assemble the 5 crystals to stop the Tarask from destroying the world. Not my best work, but for a simple D&D campaign, I thought this was fine. Quickly, I would like to point out that it's more than okay to have simple D&D campaigns. This plot works, especially for the most casual D&D players. They don't need a Song of Ice and Fire or some deeply complex multi-layered art piece. Most players would just be happy following a plot line at all. Of course, OP is just defensive of his writing because of what Rick Poole is about to do. The first session went okay. The only complaint I had with Rick Poole was that he seemed a bit inattentive the entire time, especially whenever I wasn't
do I want
directly
Alfred to be
involving him.
the main character
I
again? Like,
hesitate to even
he
call this
has
a
been the main
complaint
character in
because
a
I came
lot
to
of
wish that he
games.
stayed that way. At the end of the session, I messaged him a, "Hey, don't be afraid to speak up and involve yourself. You're a member of the group." This request was the catalyst that would ruin the game. While the debut was spent individually gathering the characters one by one, the second session is the part where they all met. In a tavern. They introduced themselves to each other, plotted out the mission, and then Rick Poole opened his mouth. "So, we all meet in a tavern, huh? Ugh, how original. I suppose we're all going to go on a long adventure against insurmountable odds, learning about each other and ourselves, but prevail nonetheless. The cliche works for us. Good sign." This got like a low chuckle from the table and myself. I was glad to see him come out of his shell. Our paladin was the first to speak. Yes, I suppose so. Alright, let's talk route. Broke your little mind. I'll try not to do that again in the future. I should say that nobody seemed to have a problem with Rick Poole yet. As time went on, the frequency of meta humor and sarcasm increased. The first time was a little funny, the second time less so, and it became less and less humorous as time passed. The party ventured into the woods to begin their journey. Some were discussing their goals. Rick Poole was drinking. This is totally acceptable, but it seems like he doesn't understand how alcohol works. I'm a recovering alcoholic of 12 years, but I'm not offended. It was just cringe-inducing to me having to watch someone act like being drunk made them better in combat or have a sharper wit. It's perfectly normal for characters to come off awkward if their player just started them. In the early sessions of a new campaign, it still happens to me sometimes, and I've been playing D&D for a very long time at this point. This could just be a goofy misstep into character, but no it isn't. This is a warning shot for what's about to come. Eventually, we approached the dungeon that contained the first crystal, the first of 5 that would seal Tarask's fate. The wizard cast light, the paladin stood up front, the rogue slinked off into the corner, and Rick Poole criticized the set design. He had a problem with the way the dungeon was arranged, saying that the layout of the dungeon made no sense. Dungeons are supposed to be real abandoned places. This room just looks like it was made to be scary and dungeon-y. That's the point of what he said anyways. In execution, he said it a bit more like, "This dungeon sucks, am I right? Something, meta humor, but still, the criticism was actually fair. I just snatched a dungeon map from the internet without really thinking about it. We encounter the boss of the dungeon after a few more fourth wall breaks involving traps and tropes. Then, a hobgoblin approaches, leading a small pack of minions. They descended on the party. Ugh, of course. What's a dungeon without a boss fight? Who's willing to bet that killing this creature advances our quest, giving us treasure too? The fight continues, and the crystal gives them a vision of the Tarask. Hey buddy, nobody knows this, but we're going to slowly work our way up to killing you over the course of 3-hour weekly sessions. Yeah, and there's nothing you can do about it either. It was so played out by now that the laughter stopped. Nobody acknowledged his humor anymore. It only took a few short sessions for this to get entirely played out, but he didn't seem to care. No, because why is it so long for a boss fight to advance the plot? A big point of meta humor is to point out inconsistencies and problems, but a
doing construction worker this late at night.
You need doesn't really call for this brand of sarcasm. I can understand why the players aren't really responsive. They're at best confused with this behavior because it's so tonally different from what they were used to. How do you even interact with this guy? It's as if he believes that everyone else thinks that what he's saying is funny or insightful, when nobody seems to care. It could be executed well. This was annoying. I didn't care for it at all, but I thought that after he realized nobody finds him funny or smart, he would realize how awkward he's being and quiet down. This didn't happen. Our rogue received a letter, but to understand it, you need to know Rogue's backstory, which Rick Poole and everyone else was about to learn. Rogue told the group that he is the last surviving member of his clan. After they were cursed by a hag, they all died in strange, coincidental ways. But for some reason, Rogue is still alive. He doesn't know why. As Rogue was explaining his backstory, you could feel Rick Poole's anticipation well up, waiting for his turn to speak. He adjusted and sat upright. What does the letter say? One other member of the clan is still alive, and he might have answers for how to... I closed my eyes and actually hung my head, waiting for Rick Poole to tear into Rogue for his cliché backstory. I winced as I heard Rick Poole chuckle under his breath. So, there are 2 orphans in our party. Is anyone else here an orphan? Nobody responded. Well, while we're doing backstories, I was always an outcast. My parents left me because the world hates smart people. If you're really intelligent, everybody leaves you. They would rather live in their idiotic bubble where their ideas are never challenged. So, Rogue, you got any more sad
You
stories?
want to
Or
use
are we all
the
caught up?
brothers
This
or
one
do you
actually
want
got a nervous laugh out of me, but before Rogue could
the brother?
reply,
Okay, let's just
Paladin muttered, maybe there's another reason everybody leaves you. Rickpool responded with an agitated, what? But Paladin dropped it and we continued our journey for the second crystal. The sessions continued, but his behavior just
Oh my
didn't
god, who's
stop.
doing
No
construction
matter
worker?
what the situation was, there was always a few wisecracks or fourth wall breaks or quippy one-liners per session.
Where
I
is
was
he? Oh, here.
personally offended whenever he would poke holes in my campaign, but I could take it. On the other hand, Rickpool developed a nasty habit of tearing into other players' characters. Like when Rogue was kind and donated to an orphan, he was the first to be all, "Whoa, the dagger with the heart of gold? Who could have seen this coming?" Despite the Paladin's willingness to speak up on occasion, Rickpool targeted Rogue the most. He would also poke at the Paladin for being a goody two-shoes stereotype. I am just geeked that Rickpool criticizes Rogue for having a tragic backstory immediately after sharing his own. This player is marked by a total lack of self-awareness.
Jesus,
We're
really?
also
If you have
beginning to see
part-
Rickpool's behavior come around on him.
if you're Romano,
This
then
party
you couldn't
seems
need
shy to
collision.
conflict, which makes perfect sense. They came here to have fun. But still, I think that if Rickpool knew how annoying he was, and ironically how unintelligent he seemed by acting like this,
Okay,
he
we're
would
just
crawl
gonna
back
keep
into
it
his
like
basement and never return. The players fought another boss, got their second crystal. By now, they've been playing for a couple months.
I really want to make
I
like new
realized how to better
There's
tolerate
no
Rickpool,
new Dali
which
team,
is
honestly.
just tune him out and keep his interactions with NPCs and important characters to a minimum. I kept going like this for 3 straight sessions. I wish I could tell you how he felt about it, but I haven't been paying enough attention to him to say. He would keep doing this annoying routine, and we
I
would
don't
keep
think
on
of camera is
dragging the
name,
story
right?
forward. I did notice that Rickpool stopped trying to run away from the party and harass uninvolved NPCs. Rickpool was stuck to the party like glue at this point, as he realized that I don't tolerate off-topic antics coming from him anymore. Where he used to leave the party to fight for spotlight on himself, he now invades the other player's personal space and involves himself with them. Now, whenever he ran away, I just told him to run anything he does by me. You want to go to the tavern? Nice, just tell me when you rejoin the party. You're doing science experiments? Cool, see ya. Then, on the 4th session of my new resolution, it became impossible to hide. The party had to present their 2 crystals to a wise seer, who would tell them where the 3rd is. As the party sat before the seer, anticipation filled the air. The room was dimly lit. The scent of incense swirled around them. The seer began to speak, her voice ethereal and mysterious. The crystals hold the key to our world's fate. They must be, Rickpool interrupted with a sarcastic chuckle. Crystals, huh? Are we sure this isn't just a fancy gem collection scheme? I didn't stop. Halfway through his quip, I interrupted him. He interrupted me back, but at this point I was just so done. So, do these crystals tell fortunes, or is that just your gift? The crystals must be united to unleash the ultimate power and save the world, or whatever. I just stopped. This information was very important, so I settled for letting him have his fun, so I can relay the important information to the real players. We all patiently waited, looking at Rickpool. Rickpool then shrugged. Hey, I'm just saying, if we're trusting our fate to some shiny rocks, we might need a backup plan. It felt so tense. I hadn't really interrupted him before now. This is the most confrontational I've ever been towards him, but I was willing to ignore it if it got the other players back in the game. Of course, that was not possible. I made it this far and had momentum, so I pressed him again. No, I'm giving important quest information. Now is not the time. This is my character. He's a jerk, but he gets the job done. He's not getting any job done. He's being obstructive and annoying. The word annoying in particular set him off. He said, maybe if you let me play my character, I wouldn't have to do it here. Just whatever, man. I dropped it. I told everybody that I'll message them what the seer said so they can know what's going on later. And I did. I texted them the seer's message. It has been 3 days and I don't know what to do. The next game should be Friday, but I'm not sure if there even is a next session, given the last one ended on such a bad note. Yeah, I don't know, man. This story sounds like it's still in development, but the email is a month old. Of course, my boring advice would be to play it by ear, talk to Rick Poole out of game, and see what happens. But if you're seeing this, feel free to send a follow-up email, Reddit post, or leave a comment. And as usual, till next time.
What is the next video?
Original characters.
Okay.
Everybody who plays D&D has one. But what happens when the Dungeon Master thinks one of his players is stealing his OC? You and me might think that's a little weird, or not at all. Mostly unremarkable. But this DM is committed to making a mountain out of a molehill, and making this everyone else's problem. But this video would not be complete without today's sponsor. If you play D&D, you probably need maps, and you couldn't possibly ask for a better deal than Tsukiko. For only $5 a month, you get access to over 4,000 maps. Looking at the quality of these maps, that should be enough evidence that this is the best deal out there. But wait, there's more. These maps work in every virtual tabletop. I'm talking Fantasy Grounds, Foundry, Roll20, and the rest. Sure, you get all the maps you could possibly want, but the library is still ever expanding. They release a new pack of maps every week, and you get to vote on the maps that they produce. Different pledges have different offerings, like animated maps and scenes to match. So, from my point of view as a DM that really
I
cares
have no
about
idea what
setting
I'm
a
gonna
scene
do.
visually,
This is probably the most
highest value bang for your buck. So check out their Patreon after the video. This game
Do I want to
has
say
been going
chill or
pretty
do I want to
well
say
for the
boring?
last
Honestly,
4
I don't know.
months, but this changed when my character died. Our group are anti-heroes. We're not meant to be moral or selfless. We're just the right people in the right place with the fate of the world on the line. 4 months, 10 sessions into the campaign, we fought a beholder boss that was opening a doom portal. I was downed, the party panicked and retreated. They left me for dead. That's where my character, Boris, human fighter and the de facto tank of our party, was killed. I understand why the party left me behind. The fight was very much unwinnable, but I'm not gonna lie to you, it still stung. I had put a lot of time into my character and he was one of my favorites. I wanted some time away from the game after that. So I said that for the sake of the group getting some time to grow into themselves and not having a revolving door of party members, I elected to skip the next month of sessions while I brewed my next character. His name was Arduran, Golden Knight, Oath of Redemption Paladin, and Paragon of Virtue. His story is that he was selected by the church to represent them, inspiring hope and giving them a good image to further their political aims. But he has a flaw. Actually, a lot of flaws. He is a very bad person who is famous for being a selfless hero. He believes that he is better than everyone. He's a narcissist, arrogant, and a rude bastard. But fueling his illusion of grandeur is that he does have high-level skills, and he is who he says he is, a powerful warrior with unlimited potential. In the land he comes from, he is the most famous representative of the church. He is the people's champion. I was hoping that throughout the span of this story, he might grow a heart and develop good relationships with the party, slowly making him a better person. His newfound good nature would struggle with his political, self-centered ambitions. This didn't happen. While I was pitching my character to the DM, he seemed a little disturbed by my character. There was clearly something wrong. He seemed disinterested. I took it as him having a bad day, but he still allowed me to use my character. As the campaign went on, it became clear that he had a major unspoken problem with my character. I noticed that there was a problem, but if he wasn't mature enough to communicate, I didn't care what he thought. I built my character
cannot see
and continued. Then, 4 sessions after my original character Boris's death, I returned to the table. Admittedly, I'm a munchkin. Every character I make has the most pluses. I designed my character's stats in the most optimized way possible. The first session was primarily spent focusing on my Golden Knight, Ardoran, his selection by the church to represent them in our world's struggle against the other world, and his journey to meet the party. Throughout the session, the DM
Maybe we
made
just combine
every
everything
NPC
into one,
treat
eh?
me like trash.
They'll be
They'd
real.
scoff
They will
and
be messed up.
disregard me. I normally wouldn't really care, but my character is supposed to be a well-known hero in this church specifically. This isn't how they were supposed to treat him. Maybe the rest of the world wouldn't care that much about his prestige, but he is the church's pride and joy, their chosen one. Common folk are supposed to be starstruck when their golden champion is around. I'm gonna say 2 things, 1 point for the player and another point for the DM. To the DM, people design their characters a certain way for a reason. They want their character traits to be reflected in the gameplay. You can't allow someone to write their character a certain way and then dump it in the trash and ignore it. That's not how role-playing games work. To the player, I'm probably missing some context, but from the outside looking in, this character seems like the meme where a low-level character has way too many accomplishments and accolades. Like the one where the backstory's about killing dragons and saving kingdoms, and then the character is level 1. Again, probably missing context, but still, if the DM approved it, then it doesn't matter either way. That was obnoxious, but I didn't mind. Remember, the DM was inattentive and dismissive when I was introducing my character to him, so I assumed he simply forgot a couple details and we could talk them out after the session. I was very, very wrong. Refocusing on the group in-game, the party was hurt and excited to hear that their new addition would be a healing paladin. After the first half of the session was over, I finally made it to introduce myself to the party. Our introduction was perfectly fine, but out of game, we knew each other well. The other players knew that there would be a catch. The second half of my debut session was spent traveling with the group. One moment that was particularly memorable was the DM making me roll to dismount my horse. No, okay, pause. There better be a lore reason for this, because as most dungeon masters know, you don't make the players roll to do something unless you want there to be a chance of failure. Also, just a hint of advice for dungeon masters or any storytellers really, if something doesn't directly help your story or player experience, consider cutting it out. Of course, keep some fluff in your game for fun, but when the fluff is unsatisfying and doesn't make your game more fun or fit the theme, throw it in the trash. Of course, I passed, but this was not the end of it. The DM would make me roll a lot of checks unnecessarily. Every time I failed a check was written to be embarrassing, but inconsequential. The DM's point is that my character is lame and embarrasses himself doing simple tasks. For some reason, even outside my home church area, my character was disliked all over the continent. Whenever I would make entrances or levy my titles and renown, people just shrugged it off. It's as if the world chose a champion to bring them victory, and then immediately became exhausted with him. I didn't understand why it was this way, but this was the last of my problems. Later, we were on a quest to close an evil portal blah 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 fate of the world stuff when it dawned on me that almost every attack made against me was a hit. During combat, enemies would constantly target me, and despite having the highest AC in the group, they would almost never miss. I am the tank, so I was normally supposed to draw enemy attention. But entire fights would pass where no hits landed on some of the other party members because they were all focusing on me. I do believe the DM was trying to kill me off a second time. I received this treatment for almost 10 more sessions. You might ask why I did, and the answer is that the roleplay with the other party members was just that good. We played very well with each other and our senses of humor perfectly matched. It mattered less than NPC interactions and our one fight per session that was stacked against me because the majority of the game was spent goofing off in roleplay. Add to that the fact that as a tank, drawing all of the violence to myself was doing my job. Of course, going down every fight and drawing a clearly disproportionate amount of critical hits to myself was disheartening. I got critically hit at least once per fight, but usually more. I got used to it and felt better at the fact that everybody else at the table acknowledged how badly I was hit every single fight. The DM must have eventually realized how unbothered I was because he just had to ramp up the issue. At one point, he messaged me. He effectively stated that I stole his original character. I had no idea what he meant. He then sent me a link to his account on popular art website, and there he was, a golden knight surrounded by a cheering crowd with a bio that says he is a holy hero. I'm intentionally leaving out details, but I could understand the similarities were there. Two golden holy celebrity heroes. What I couldn't understand is that he thought I was plagiarizing his OC. I thought this was a fairly common character. Also, nowhere in his character's bio does it say anything about him being secretly narcissistic and flawed. More than anything, I was confused. Did the DM think I intentionally made a parody of his OC, and the entire campaign I was mocking his character in front of him? I explained that that wasn't the case. This is just a coincidence. He seemed to understand until a couple short sessions later. We were sent on a journey to a large volcano where the biggest portal was being opened. At this point, we have gotten pretty good at closing portals, so we were ready for a big one. We geared up and prepared to go when we were stopped. The captain informed us that we would need another pair of hands to help us. A real champion. From a side door, he emerged to greet us. A knight clad in gold arrives to the cheers of everybody in the room. His golden armor, blue cape, and walk into the room communicated authority and prestige. He waved to the crowd before facing us. I am the people's champion, the holy warrior, here to guide our journey. He just showed up to show me up. I didn't know how to react. It was humorous. I haven't mentioned yet that we are all adults. And we were off. The combat encounters got tougher to match our growing party. What didn't match our party was the distribution of attacks we received. The number of attacks pointed directly at me increased. The amount of times they critted on me increased. And the amount of times I was downed all increased. I went down faster with less time to respond. I still remember at the end of one of the fights, the DM's new OC pulled me aside and said, paraphrasing, "Hey buddy, it's totally okay that you mess up so much. Just try and follow in my footsteps a little bit closer, okay?" This has got to be the most blatantly petty DM I've ever seen. I get that OP is paraphrasing, so whatever, maybe he put it nicer, but there is really no way you can make that point without being awful. This DM in particular sounds like they only really think about themselves and don't consider anybody else. Golden Paladins have never existed before he made one up, and this idea is so good and original that nobody else could possibly make this up too, or else they're stealing. Not only that, but if anyone steals it, we need to step in and correct them. My point is, DMs steal all the time, so as stupid as it is to assume that OP was stealing a pretty generic character, I would be really surprised if the DM wasn't guilty of the same thing. This drew a reaction of cringe from a couple of us at the table. Half of me was furious, the other half wanted to laugh. But it's okay. My favorite part of the game, roleplay, was great. But not really. Remember when I said that we were playing people that weren't the best at being heroes? This became a sore spot for us. Whenever we would mistreat each other or NPCs or do anything that a choir boy wouldn't do, OC would have something to say about it and stop us. We needed to replace a wheel on our horse? Don't ask. So we had to get back to our old ways. We drew up a plan. We would stop the next wagon, steal their wheel, and leave them behind. So we sent our party face, a well-known hero for our deeds across the realm, to stop the next wagon.
Oh my god, it's Balazir Reddrake. What are you doing here?
Well, you see, we're actually on our way to close the volcano portal. Resting here momentarily. You can join us if you like.
Of course, woohoo, yeah!
We rested together, socialized. It was a very well done scene. Then our rogue snuck off to steal a wheel off of their wagon while they weren't looking. He rolled well on his stealth check, but right when he put his tools to their wheel, he felt a metal gauntlet on his shoulder.
You need to stop this right now.
The Golden Knight had stopped him with one hand on his shoulder and another threatening him with his sword.
I have a wheel arriving tomorrow morning. I requested one from HQ.
And he did. The next morning we got our wheel, attached it, and continued on our journey. Before this, our questing would be interrupted with a need, and we would choose to fill that need in a horrible way. If we wanted food and didn't have any money, we would spend an hour doing wacky hijinks like stealing or scamming. We weren't murder hobos, and we were never violent to innocents, but we also left a trail of clutter and misdeeds behind us. Our fans would love us until we rode into town. It was part of the fun. Now, whenever we were hungry, OC had money to take care of us. If we were bored, OC would entertain us with stories of his triumphs or train us in physical combat. Humoring the OC would result in us getting inspiration points, so we often would, but part of the fun was gone. Talk about the quickest way to kill enthusiasm for your game. Let the players struggle. Let them solve their own problems. Having your DMPC stop them from struggling doesn't make them like you more. It makes them avoid you because they wanted to struggle the whole time. They played the game because they want to encounter challenges and overcome them. Just handing the players solutions to all of their problems kills a major point of the game. We spend the next couple sessions getting closer to the volcano. It was a soulless march where OC kept trying to show and tell us how to be real heroes. We would encounter something bad happening, and OC would lead the way in, interact with all the NPCs in a heroic way, and then gesture at us players to follow his lead. On the road, we saw smoke in the distance. Normally, we would ignore it. We weren't paid to fix the problem, and we have a giant doom portal to close that's inside of a volcano, so maybe we shouldn't get involved, endangering ourselves and spending valuable resources on something that is objectively much less important. No. Apparently, we are moral monsters, and we have to investigate it. The OC put his hand on his sword once again, telling us that we have to go there and help whoever we can. A few of us audibly sighed. We go to the town, and to absolutely nobody's surprise, the portal demons already destroyed it. OC got his big moment where he could mourn the dead, and we got back on the road. This whole scene was pointless. We already knew that the demons do this. We didn't find anything new, no loot, so we all just awkwardly watched OC cry over it. We then get back on the road in the least awkward way we could manage while the OC swore his vengeance. The next couple sessions leading up to the volcano followed a
I forgot
simple
my own
four-step
character
formula.
name.
1. We're on the road traveling when we get an encounter. 2. I get downed, usually because of a critical hit. 3. The DM subtly advertises that there are multiple ways we could solve the aftermath. 4. If we choose the wrong one, the OC places his hand on his sword and coerces us to do the right thing. This caused us to treat Golden OC the way we treated each other, which is unfairly. We would make jokes at Goody Two-Shoes' expense and mock him whenever he was or wasn't around. Whenever we did this to each other, we recognized it as roleplay, and it rolled off our backs because we all thought it was funny. The DM took it personally, though. That is no way to be comrades. Come on, if we're going to do this, we have to work together and be a team. We cannot be divided. That's not the way of light and righteousness. We all paused before 3 of us couldn't help but burst out laughing. He would then put his hand on his sword, which finally got us to shut up. Okay, as poorly executed as this is, I actually think I understand and sympathize with part of what the DM is motivated by here. Often, DMs want their players to be the good guys, and there's nothing wrong with wanting that, because it seems that as often as DMs want their players to be good guys, players like to goof off and be crazy. So it makes sense that the DM would want to add a guiding hand to nudge the party into better decisions. Now, all of us know that this was the wrong way to do it, but there are several right ways to do it. My favorite one being the DM just saying before the campaign starts that this is a heroic campaign where you play as virtuous people. Anyways, he wouldn't punish us directly for this, but he was clearly displeased. He eventually gave up on even trying to stop us from bickering and banter because he didn't want us to gang up on him. We made it to the volcano, and as expected, the portal was right below us, right where it was supposed to be. We delved deep into the mount, killing everything in our path. I get knocked down twice, the OC brings me back twice, bad experience. But we finally make it to the base, kill the big bad evil guy, I go down again, and then the DM pulls yet another crit on me. I was at 0 HP for most of these encounters, making death saves and generally being excluded from the game. While I was down, the rest of the party wins the battle, closes the portal, and celebrates. I was surprised at how hurt my feelings were. Watching everybody but me experience the big battle of this arc was upsetting. If this is how the rest of the campaign was gonna go, I wanted to leave. After that session, I really did consider quitting for good. The DM was a replacement for me. He was just me, but better at everything. There really was no point in the party dragging me around. If I left the group, the only difference would be that they don't have to drag my corpse around and revive me every 2 rounds. I didn't care that this was probably the DM's plan to get rid of me. Fine, the DM wins. Good job, you win. I talked to a couple of the other players about it that I was closer to, and they agreed that the DM has abused the situation wholly. It was nice getting reassurance from the others, but it wasn't enough. I was just going to find a different group. I did tell them that I would stick around for at least a couple more weeks to wrap up my character. I told the DM that some life stuff came up and I don't want to be in this campaign anymore. I was going to give it a couple more sessions while I figure out how to wrap up my character
Let me think about this
and
one.
then leave. But I wasn't even given that. The DM stopped me right there and said that it would be best if I just stopped attending altogether. He said that my roleplay in the party is already fit and they don't need to cover any more bases. Simply put, there just isn't room left for another player. I was pissed. I admit I had thought about finding some dramatic or vengeful way to close out the campaign, kill or be killed, organize the table against the DM, and I probably would have. It would have made a much better story. Get a big moment, you just gotta keep going. Maybe it's for the best the game ended this way. I would love to know if the group still gets together at all, or if the other players know he was kicked out. But until then, thanks for watching. Till next time.
아다 콜라게나 수수 아웹무다 노크리프 노크르포스.
One of the more controversial things in D&D is the concept of a DMPC, or the Dungeon Master having their own player character join the party. Some say that it's perfectly fine. The DM should feel included with the party and get to experience the game with them. Others say the DM already has a role and they should focus on that. Personally, I think it's a risky move. It can be fine, but a Dungeon Master controlling a true player character would be out of place in most campaigns. This is one such case of a DMPC going bad and backstabbing the party. Just before we roll post on this, if you like maps, you're going to love today's sponsor. Viewer, this is Tsukiko, your new map dealer. Next time you're scouting for fantasy maps to use in your next Dungeons & Dragons or Pathfinder campaign, Tsukiko has you covered. With 4,000 stunning, hand-drawn fantasy maps and D&D battle maps, Tsukiko listens to what you have to say. If you can't find what you want, just let them know and they might add it to their weekly Patreon poll. Map packs come with variations for things like seasons, time of day, weather effects, and much more. So if your players spend hours in, say, a tavern planning their next move, you can seamlessly switch the environment just like that. Tsukiko fantasy maps and D&D battle maps work seamlessly on most virtual tabletops. So follow the link to Tsukiko's Patreon. Back to the story. My DM's character wiped out the entire party. He also denies that his DMPC is overpowered. Is he right? Our DM, who we will call Halo, kept trying to put hard moral choices in the campaign. Choices that had no right answer. There was one incident where we had to choose between letting a village die or advancing our goals. There was another time when the only way we could get an important item was by killing an innocent man. There were more such cases, but every time we were faced with a hard moral choice, it was actually easy for us. We simply moved towards our goals without regard for the nameless NPCs that would get hurt. Looking back on it, Halo was probably annoyed that we would never really consider
I'm
the
gonna try
morality
to
of our choices,
to
and instead
close my
always
eyes
make
for a little bit
selfish
because
choice.
it
But
is kind of
we
late
didn't
around the
care.
time. So
And no matter
I'm gonna
what
try to
we
close my
did,
eyes a
I
little
feel
bit
our
and then we're
characters were
gonna I'm
justified
gonna try to continue
by
like
the
finding
fact that we
ideas
were
more.
stopping an evil
I'm
tyrant from
sorry.
taking over. I think it would actually be cool to see what happens when a party completely disregards the world around them to save it. It would be an interesting story. Just deeply flawed heroes who are on the right side for the wrong reasons. Also, the consequences of disregarding the people in the world that they're saving could come around to bite them. Also, I think it would just open up an interesting discussion about the ends justifying the means. But this campaign, unfortunately, doesn't make it work. Later in the campaign, there was yet another morally gray decision to make. We needed to go into the villain's hideout immediately to catch him. But if we did that, we would leave our city exposed to an invading army. The city's defenses are unlikely to hold off the invaders on their own, so they need our help. This was the only one that gave us pause. Not really because of the ethical concerns of leaving them undefended, rather, we were worried about our favorite NPCs dying, losing our hard-earned stuff, and our home base. We were unconcerned about the people in the city, debating over whether the trade-off is worth it from a merely mechanical point of view. We decided to defend the town and let the villain gain some ground. The battle begins, but just after the first couple rounds of combat, a beam flashed across the sky, crashing into enemy lines. He clawed through the enemy army effortlessly, with all sorts of flashing lights and spells booming across the battlefield. We complete our few rounds of combat, but after the combat is over, we investigate the scene. We see a golden knight with a blue cape. I forget his name, so we will just call him Superman. Superman gets up and greets the party. "Hello, you must be the party I've been sent to. The gods have been watching you and your neglect for this world. When you finally made the right choice, that's when they knew that there was good in you, and I was sent to draw it out of you." This just neuters character choice and is also condescending. The whole point of games having tough moral choices is that the characters have to make choices that sometimes have no right answer, and then they have to live with the consequences. If I was designing a morally gray choice-based game where the true villain was irredeemably evil, and the players chose to become the lesser of two evils in order to stop the real bad guy, I actually think it makes perfect sense for a good faction to try and stop them. I would make this good faction well-intentioned, but the party sees them as soft, naive, or otherwise incapable of taking out the real villains. Now, our once noble party has to kill morally righteous people to get them out of the way so they can focus on the real villain. That turning point would be felt. Anyways, where were we? Superman was a strange cleric/barbarian multi-class with a homebrew race and background. Anyways, this is where the real Hoarder's story begins. We had no reason yet to doubt Halo. Even as he appeared to be visibly annoyed at our choices sometimes, the game was good. But Superman was annoying to the max. Whenever we had downtime, he would take up all of the space by monologuing about morality, the inherent value of all humankind, and our duty to be better than the enemy. We only had to deal with him in the first place as a punishment for doing a good deed. So I figured that if we just did enough bad deeds, we would be rid of him. An opportunity presented itself soon enough. Because we chose to defend the city, the main villain got away. During that time, we did capture one of his men, and he had information. He wouldn't break, cursing and spitting at us. We weren't glad to be doing this, but it looked like if we were going to get the information, we would need to torture it out of him. "No, that isn't right. Look at yourselves. You are better than this," Superman told us. "Do you have any better ideas? We have to find our mark." "There's gotta be a better way. There is never a good reason to torture. That's barbaric. Barbaric times call for barbaric measures. We don't make the rules." "But the gods, you can't let them down." "Hey buddy, F you and your gods. We don't care." We then tortured the NPC for information. He gave it up after a little persuasion. Superman scowled at us and said that there will be consequences for our actions. We told him that, yeah, the consequence for our actions was getting valuable information. Halo was pissed. He didn't show it, but we knew. In a way, I do feel bad for the DM. The story isn't over yet, so I won't jump and say that he's the real victim here, but so far it just looks like Halo is incompatible with the party due to different expectations, not necessarily one or the being totally bad. I understand being a DM and wanting to play with a heroic party, but watching them fall short. Unfortunately, the party will not be the good guys if they do not want to be the good guys. However, I have a feeling Halo will ruin this before long. We kept going for a couple sessions. Halo kept trying to make us do good deeds. Whenever we didn't do one, he would tell us about how our bad decisions will bite us in the end. Later, we were passing through a village. On our way through, a villager told us that they were all impoverished and asked us to help solve their bandit problem. Before we could do anything, Superman enlisted our help to save the village, saying that we would be monsters if we didn't do it. And we were already on thin ice with the gods already, so we may as well. We were aggravated by Superman constantly showing off how strong he is, then lecturing us about how awful we are. When games were done, us players would privately complain to each other about how much we despised him. The problem is the party doesn't want to do good, they want to do the objectives. They like the main content because it doesn't place expectations on who they are as a person. The only thing they actually need is to be willing to fight the big bad. The problem with the side content is, the side content needs the players to want to act against their own interests to help others. The weirdest thing about this story that I just can't explain is that the DM actually got the party to choose the right thing before when they defended the city. If the DM was smart, he would have learned why they wanted to defend the city and use that information to get the party to want to help other people. But no, let's see how this ends. After helping the villagers, we went back to tracking down the big bad, and surprise, surprise, because we helped the villagers, the big bad escaped our grasp once again. That night at the party's camp, Superman left to hunt for food, and while he was gone, my friend Jace said that if we ever have to work for Superman again, she would kill him. Some of us were more reluctant than others, but we all agreed. Halo, of course, heard us all say this, but we didn't think he would favor Superman over us. After that night, Superman stopped forcing us to help people. He would still lecture us, but he wouldn't make us do anything. A few sessions passed and Halo made his last move. We had overtaken an enemy fort. In it, we found a massive font of power. If we used it, we would all get a level up, but Superman told us that if we give the power to him, he would be able to divide it and give it sentience, creating an army of supermen. We could not allow this, so we told him no, he would not be doing that. We then began to absorb the power for ourselves. Superman warned us that without his army, we would never defeat the big bad. We didn't care. Superman warned us one more time that he would do what he had to get that font of power. We drew our weapons and got in formation. Superman hit us with an AoE attack and combat began. There wasn't much to the fight. His AC was too high for us to hit him often, so we frequently missed. Even if we did hit, he had a mountain of hit points. Also, his attacks were highly effective. It was a long fight, but in the end he defeated us. And he also took the font of power. I didn't know how to respond at the time. None of us did. Next time we met, the topic of the D&D game was brought up. I had mentioned that Superman only won because he was overpowered. He's not overpowered, he's just well designed, Halo responded. So I ask you crabs, is he overpowered? This is a case that happens all too often, where the DM has a different vision for the game than the players do. While the DM acted badly throughout, if the party agreed to a campaign where they were expected to behave honorably, then yes, the party would be in the wrong. But it wasn't mentioned that there was any communication on that point. So I'm just going to assume that there was no discussion or expectation that the party should be selfless heroes. In any case, dangling a level up in front of the players' faces and then taking it away is just evil, man. As much as that story stung, this is a story where the players get god-tier revenge on the DMPC. Roll post. This was still very early into my D&D career. We were playing 3.5 and our previous campaign ended for a reason I simply cannot remember. One of the players wanted to run a campaign that practically removed any power limiters one might have on character creation. Any homebrew anything was open as long as you ran it by the DM. The only limit to our power was a time manipulation magic user that could basically disrupt reality within the first 3 to 4 levels. That one was turned down, so there were limits. There were 5 players, myself, 2 friends, James and Ignatius, both of whom I met in my freshman dorm, the DM and his girlfriend, who James knew from work. As this was basically an unlimited campaign, we were all playing homebrew classes. I myself was playing an adventurer dragon race class combo thing I found, as I was, and still am, massively obsessed with dragons in any capacity. Ignatius was playing a samurai, and the DM was playing some sort of vampire. Yes, the DM also made a character. Even before I knew the Hoarder's stories of DMPCs, this kind of confused me, but he insisted that it was not going to be a problem. Okay, DMPCs are a difficult thing to talk about. DMPCs get a bad name, in part because of videos like this. If I had to give advice to 90% of DMs, don't do it. You're not going to make the game better by doing it. But a DMPC being in your game should not be considered a reason to leave before it even starts. In my mind, a DMPC being in the game can be a reasonable cause for suspicion, but that's all it is. Suspicion. Nothing more. So if you have had a bad experience with a DMPC, please don't kick yourself or think it's your fault because you didn't read the signs, because just the DMPC existing is not an issue. And for a while, it was not a problem, or at least I didn't notice it at first anyway. The main problem came from the fact that that balance was never even considered. I don't know if this was intentional, or if the DM just lacked the skill needed to properly plan out the progression of the campaign. The result was just insane XP gains that had us jumping over 1 or 2 levels per encounter. There were so many levels and XP being gained that everyone grabbed multiclassing just to have somewhere to put levels. Being a new player, I didn't understand what such unchecked progression meant, since there was no buildup of character power. This is a common mistake that otherwise good DMs can make sometimes. They want their players to feel powerful, so they just snap their fingers and make them powerful, like a genie. But it's important to make the growth in power feel earned. It feels cheap when they're just handed everything. The solution is simple and pretty obvious. When characters progress, make sure that there's a reason for it. D&D proper can make that a little difficult, given that a level up just makes you instantly more powerful at the snap of your fingers, but players don't usually complain about that. The great DMs realize that there is more to progression than just slapping a level up on your character. Just for one example, players love it when they have a cool story that explains each of their magic items. But you can apply that same principle to the party's reputation or influence in the world. Anyways, where were we? The first actual problem came when a massive Darkfire Phoenix attacked the city that we were in. We were already rapidly leveling before this, so we take out this gargantuan Darkfire bird in almost a single round, maybe 2. This is when the DM informed us that when the Phoenix dies, it explodes in a mile-wide nuclear-styled Darkfire explosion. Side note here, in an attempt to rein in the unchecked progression, this Darkfire obliterated the soul of whomever it killed, as otherwise the souls of the PCs could easily reincarnate. So there we were, fighting this Darkfire bird, and we were about to get incinerated. We start looking for a way out, and somehow the portable hole spell was massively misunderstood, and the DM allowed us to get sucked up into the pocket dimension as a reaction. So instead of a post-mortem TPK, we all survive. Yay. Only to learn that the bird revives after like 5 minutes. A plan begins to form. We figure out how many times we can abuse the portable hole, and since this section of the city is already gone, we literally farm this creature for as many times as we can escape from the death blast. I don't recall how we dealt with it in the end, but we farmed over 10 levels from all the XP of repeatedly killing this massive creature. This is something I don't understand. D&D has so many advantages over video games, so why intentionally give yourself video game problems? At this point, why doesn't the party put a basket on the shopkeeper's head and then rob him blind? But what I like about this part of the story is that it ties all the way back to the beginning when we talked about character progression. It's unsatisfying to farm 10 levels off of one creature. It's also unsustainable. Imagine getting all immersed in your character, excited to play a good long campaign, and then you zoot through half of the levels in one fight. My only question is, what was going through the DM's head at this time? He surely has to redraw a ton of his campaign plans after this. Did he panic? And why didn't he retcon this immediately after? This DM perplexes me. I'm now aware that there are many things about that setup that would not work, from the spell to the creature, etc. I think the only reason the DM allowed it was so that his own DM PC would benefit from it as well. More on that in a moment. Another system he introduced to deal with inflated XP gains was the ability to split your PC's soul into a second being. And I had the idea of creating a dragon-mounted archer duo. So I took this option and created a ranger. The DM immediately challenged me the first time, that I had them go out flying or get equipment to allow the archer to ride the dragon. You need to roll persuasion to allow the archer to ride the dragon. And I asked why. He tried to say that the noble dragon wouldn't allow a lesser race to ride him. But the argument just made no sense to me. They both shared the same soul. Why wouldn't the dragon allow it? Especially when I, the player of both of them, am not only okay with it, but actively intending it. The questioning of my characters was not really a hoarder story, but it was a symptom of the real issue. Even before the Darkfire bird, the DM was getting unbearably annoying every time we leveled up. Everyone's excited about new classes or abilities, sharing them with the group. Each time, the DM would proudly, and unprompted, boast that it would not be able to kill his DMPC. In fact, his DMPC could still kill anyone in the party. It didn't really bother me, as I wasn't looking for PvP. Well, it didn't bother me the first few times, but after a half dozen instances of this, it got really old, and I recall the group telling the DM as such. We thought we actually got through to him, as during the next session, his vampire edgelord DMPC falls through a portal to hell, effectively removing him from the campaign. This was great. No more concern on if the DM was going to stab us in the back with the character he was favoring. Oh, how wrong we were. A number of sessions later, the vampire returns. The vampire returns after a massive story about how time moves differently in hell, and the vampire has spent the last 200 years drinking the blood of powerful demons. And he was now decked out in regenerating bone armor, stupid high armor class, and more magic powers than you could shake a stick at. Pretty sure he was also now a demon lord? He gained like 20 levels doing so. It seems in every story of a DMPC, there's a part where they come close to shaking him, but he just bounces back. Maybe it's the DM trying to get the party to save him, or maybe he's trying to see how the party would fare on their own, or maybe the DM heard the phrase "absence makes the heart grow fonder" and tried being absent. Then again, I wouldn't chalk this DM up as the most socially aware. Regardless, this part of the story is hilarious. OC. Believe it or not, it gets worse. The DM was more than thrilled to tell the party all about the amazing, powerful abilities he had for his character. This allowed me to plan for countering his abilities. I do want to take a moment to state that this was not just about taking out the DMPC for being annoying. It was more the DM was subtle about his plans for his character to attack the party as running into a brick wall. He was just waiting for the chance to attack the party. So, one of the other players, Ignatius, took the Mage Slayer class. The most notable ability is that if a foe teleports, blinks, warps, or magically moves, the Mage Slayer is allowed to move with them. The only notable thing is that the character had like 60 feet of blind sense. Did I mention before that this campaign was stupidly unbalanced? With the counter prepared, the player waited for the DMPC to make the first move. And move he did. Raise the curtain on the finale. We were in a generic dungeon. A good hour or two into the session, the party got split up into a few chambers. James was alone with the DMPC and almost down, but still alive. This is when the DMPC vampire attacks James' character to suck his blood, saying that he was useless and I needed his blood, or whatever defense. James falls unconscious and the dominoes start to fall. In character, we call out this attack against the party. He tried to claim that no one else would know. Ignatius was within range of his blind sense to know what happened, and states as such. The DM immediately argues with him in character, trying to defend his actions. Ignatius, both in-game and out, is just done. We all were at this point, I think. I only stuck around to watch this final clash. The samurai rushes the vampire and raises his sword to strike. The DMPC blinks away, the DM fuming. And that's when Ignatius uses the Mage Slayer ability. The DM, of course, immediately calls foul, and then Ignatius shows him the character sheet with the ability. From a class the DM approved, but never actually read. If he had taken the time to review the sheets, he would have known about the ability and the player's intent to counter the DMPC and show that yes, we can attack and defeat the DMPC. The DMPC tries blinking into many different rooms, seemingly without limit. The Mage Slayer ability is also without limit. Eventually, the DMPC gives up trying to escape and turns to fight. This story keeps getting funnier by the second. First, the DM is just lazy. I assume that he was so self-assured that he thought he would be able to win no matter what. So there was no point in reading the other player's abilities. Because hey, I'm the DM, I always win. Right? That's what happens. I find it hilarious that the DM literally has all the power in the D&D world, but is rendered powerless by his own incompetence and one player, the DM Slayer. He reminds me of Kratos. He's not a victim of the DM or the game, the DM is a victim of him. Regardless, we'll see what happens when the DM's unlimited power clashes against his own incompetence. Our samurai has an obscene number of multi-attacks and overpowers the vampire's bone regen nonsense until the DMPC is finally dead. To the DM's credit, he didn't try to smite the players, he only used what was on his sheet, as completely overpowered as it was, and didn't try to revive the DMPC afterwards. But he did rage quit the campaign and declare that it was over. Oddly, when making his overpowered and bad character, he accidentally included one of the most important things to a good character, a weakness. Nobody really likes a character that has every power and ability, but no weaknesses or handicaps. For most people, this is not an issue. I'm talking more about the Mary Sues or min-maxers. In short, if you're going to make Superman, also make Kryptonite. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed. Till next time.
You already know who Sherlock Holmes is. He's one of the most famous characters in all of Western canon. He was in dozens and dozens and dozens of stories by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle from 1891 to 1927. He's a pop culturally important icon and a foundational figure in the crime and mystery genres of fiction that have continued all the way to the present day. The character has been adapted and reimagined and referenced more than any other fictional character, except of course for Jesus Christ. The character's so instantly recognisable that, if you strap a hat and coat and pipe onto a teddy bear and put it in the window of your shop, people will come in asking how many thousands of pounds they can give you for the Sherlock bear.
Three thousands of pounds.
Well, here it is.
There's many direct film adaptations, including 2 fun romps made by Guy Ritchie of all people. There's a bunch of old film serials, and there's a whole bunch of famous actors who've had a turn playing him. There's multiple different television versions, an animated series set in the 22nd century where he got frozen for hundreds of years, and also Watson is a robot for some reason, and a Canadian children's TV series starring Sherlock's great-grandniece Shirley Holmes.
Those last 2 are canon. I can prove it!
And there's perhaps an uncountable amount of books, shows, films, and other properties directly inspired by or based on the stories and characters. One of the most obvious and best in recent history being House MD, a show I've seen all the way through multiple times, starring Hugh Laurie as Dr. House, and Robert Sean Leonard as Dr. James Wilson. Do you get it? And my goodness, we haven't even talked about the anime adaptations. Let's not do that. Then there are the 2 recent and still active television adaptations. Elementary plays out like a police procedural in tone, which is fitting because that type of story is arguably a natural descendant of the original genre, and it's set in the US, this time with Dr. Joan Watson, played by Lucy Liu, and it's pretty good. It's not as good as House, but it's a well put together show, and it's very comfy. And then there's Sherlock. Sherlock is an overproduced, overwritten, over-pissed pile of garbage and the greatest reason ever made to dodge paying your TV license. But what's so wrong about it? And why do so many people like it? Or rather, why did so many people think they liked it until season 4 came out and everyone collectively realised it was bad and always had been? And why did that happen? All these questions and more are going to be answered over the course of this primal hallucinatory nightmare, video essay, and I hope I can properly impart why this show is such a horrible travesty. And just to make it clear in advance, I'm going to do it without ever getting Benedict Cumberbatch's name wrong on purpose for a lazy overused joke. Not even once. Okay, I'm gonna do it once. Benedict Cumberbad. Okay, now it's out of my system. This isn't just the story of one bad show. Really, it's the story of the life and times of its lead writer, Stephen William Moffat. Moffat got spat out of a hole in the ground in Paisley in 1961 with the straightforward mission of systematically destroying all of English pop culture, and no one's stopped him yet. Okay, that's not fair. Moffat is himself a staple of modern English pop culture, having written or been involved with a couple of really good shows in his life, including Coupling, one of the more experimental, creative, and genuinely funny romantic sitcoms ever made. It's loosely based on how he met his wife, who, by the way, produced the show, which is probably why he had so much creative freedom. Although it does raise some questions about how insular the higher-level production staff at the BBC have become. I'm sure that won't come up later. After that, during the reboot of Doctor Who, perhaps the only other British pop cultural staple as iconic as Sherlock Holmes, Moffat came on and wrote numerous really good episodes that are loved by the fanbase, giving him massive critical acclaim and winning him, among other things, a Hugo Award and a BAFTA. If you don't know what those awards are or what they mean, it's okay, no one does. He's been a fan of Doctor Who all his life, and in 1999, he even wrote the Doctor Who parody episode The Curse of Fatal Death.
Why'd you have chairs on a Dalek spaceship anyway?
We will explain later.
This special is one of the best contributions to the series ever, and somehow still more progressive than the real Doctor Who ever managed to be. It ends with the Doctor regenerating into a woman. Scandalous. Now there's a guy who should be running Doctor Who, the fanbase collectively said aloud. His writing is scary, dramatic, he has genuine established comedic chops both within and without the science fiction genre. He might even, make there be a Doctor not played by a man. Maybe. And in a television miracle, the likes of which hasn't been seen before or since in science fiction, when Rusty Davies stood down as showrunner, the fans got what they wanted. Oops. Some of the good aspects of Moffat's writing remain, but overall, the show is somewhat lacking something with him in the driver's seat. There's a lot of problems, but the main one, alongside him not doing the one thing it would have been really cool for him to do the 2 times and soon to be 3 the Doctor has regenerated under his watch, is that the show is now totally dedicated to the persona of the Doctor. Previously, the Doctor was the main character, yes, and he was very important in the story of the canon. He'd been around for a long time, and he knows the history of the universe almost offhand, and he's dabbled in events so often that writers have played this both for drama and for comedy.
Sonic Blaster, 51st century, weapon factories of Villengard.
You been to the factories?
Once.
Well, they're gone now, destroyed. Main reactor went critical, vaporized the lot.
Like I said, once.
That one's from the first episode Moffat did, by the way, but ultimately he was just a guy with his own personality and problems who liked having adventures and was a single piece of the puzzle of every episode's story. Moffat's version of the show positions the Doctor as the central puzzle piece to complete the universe, with an army of secret societies out to personally destroy the Doctor because he's the most important person of all time, and special, and wow.
He is the Doctor. He has walked this universe for centuries untold. He has seen stars fall to dust.
The first episode, written by Moffat with himself as showrunner, ends with the Doctor winning by telling the villains how cool and important and special he is, and this speech scares them off. It's all about the Doctor, instead of the stories the Doctor interacts with. The lesson here is that Moffat is a decent writer, capable of being a great one at times, but a terrible showrunner because he believes his own hype. He's very good at implying there's something smart or deep happening and throwing nice tidbits about the Doctor's history into the mix, like the thing about the gun factory, but he's not very good at actually doing these things that are referred to. And a story that consists entirely of a man running around implying he used to do cool shit is a bad story. Moffat simply doesn't write in the way that's required to pace and execute a full series of television. Which leads us to the problem of him getting to do that with Sherlock. What made the original stories so popular was the fact they were self-contained. Apart from a few scant references to other events or the year the story takes place, nothing connects the Sherlock Holmes stories to each other as a singular narrative. On top of that, Holmes and Watson don't change all that much as people over the course of all those stories. This was hugely beneficial to the impact of the work, because it meant that even though there were tons of stories, a person could get a complete narrative without the idea that they were missing too much if they read one of them. It also meant that since there wasn't a larger overarching plot that needed to be served by each individual story, they all had their own room to breathe. If all the dozens of stories had tied into each other, people would have got confused and bored, and it wouldn't have been as punchy as getting a series of short, complete stories that were all satisfying on their own. This format survives in many adaptations. The 40s serials, for example, don't tie into each other at all, even though there's 14 of them. You can watch Sherlock Holmes and the Pearl of Death, a personal favourite, and never need to see any of the others to know what's going on or feel satisfied. And even in Elementary or House, while there's narratives that run throughout the series, most episodes deal with their own particular one-off mystery and don't have to be all interlinked, so even tuning into a random episode you feel like you got a complete story. I think it's fair to say the episodic nature of Sherlock Holmes is key to its appeal and should remain in any adaptation. Sherlock takes the core concept of the storytelling of Sherlock Holmes and why it works, crumples it up, hides it in one of 6 busts of Napoleon, and then uses them as clubs to kill baby seals. It opens on Watson's experiences scarring him and the murders that set up that episode's killer. See, it opens on Watson because historically Watson is the point of view from which the audience experiences Holmes. Watson is the one we actually relate to. We must first understand Watson to understand Holmes. Remember that, because this is the last time it ever happens on Sherlock. Then Watson meets Holmes. He comes with him on a case and they begin to bond, and almost the entire episode is focused on actually solving the crime. You know, the fun mystery story? Well, sort of. About 30 minutes in, Watson is taken out of the story to meet Sherlock's brother Mycroft, played by Mark Gatiss, one of the other 2 writers of the show from Moffat. They take time, attention, and focus away from the plot of the episode at hand, just to let you know as early as possible that Sherlock has a brother who's around, and he does stuff. He keeps popping up just to sort of let you know he exists, and he's keeping tabs on what's going on. But apart from that, almost a full hour is dedicated to trying to solve the crime. The first 2 episodes are probably the closest the show ever gets to being good, because you get a lot of long stretches where the characters try to use deductive reasoning to solve a mystery. It's still bullshit for reasons we'll get into later, but it's the least bullshit we're gonna get, and that makes it worthy of a fucking prize. But then this happens. The killer, the cab driver, shows up at Sherlock's place for unknown reasons, and then he just sort of gets into the cab. Then he takes him to an abandoned building and they play mind games while he explains that he knows about Sherlock because Moriarty pays him whenever he kills someone, and also told him about Sherlock because Moriarty knows about Sherlock and is a fan of his.
How did you find me?
I was warned about you.
Who warned you about me?
There's someone out there who's noticed.
Who would notice me?
Got yourself a fan.
How did you find me? How did you find me? I want a name.
Wait, what? This, I'm tapping my table. This is where the problems begin. Right here. Everything in the entire universe of the show exists to set up the inevitable confrontation between Sherlock and Moriarty, who already knows about Sherlock and is playing games with him for fun from day one. It wasn't enough to have a one-off murder mystery where Sherlock figures out who the killer is and set a good tone, and then maybe have him come up in the future to deal with. The same thing happens again with the second episode. It starts out on the right foot with the opening setting up the characters for that episode, but then at the end, we get this scene where it turns out the villain also works for Moriarty, and he has her killed. Once again, this is completely unnecessary. Not everyone bad in the world has to turn out to be working for Moriarty. This to me relates 2 things. 1, lack of understanding of what makes the source material work, and 2, the creators' lack of faith in their own material. The creators have taken a series of stories made famous in the first place by the fundamental fact you can read them in any order, and made it into a continuous slog depicting a pitched, grand battle in which most of the playing pieces you see don't actually have any influence on this wider thing. None of these people matter. This guy doesn't matter. It's all about Sherlock and Moriarty fucking with each other. Sometimes in the books, Sherlock just helped a couple of people out of a jam, and that was enough. Adding in this big, important, grand plan undermines the investment in the actual stories. A Scandal in Bohemia wasn't going to be made any better by being part of some long-running intellectual magic mind battle between Sherlock and a gay supervillain. So Arthur Conan Doyle didn't bother, and instead focused on telling one of the most popular and compelling mystery stories in the entire Western fucking canon. Moffat, however, seemed to have other plans. The worst part is that at some point Moffat understood this. The unaired pilot of Sherlock is a version of the first episode where Mycroft isn't shoehorned in, and the villain doesn't turn out to be funded and informed by a Moriarty who already knows about Sherlock. The resulting story is much stronger because you get the entire episode dedicated to setting up Sherlock and Watson's dynamic far better than you can when you're too busy with everything else, and the actual crime they're solving isn't undercut by already being all about Moriarty and whatever the hell he's up to. It gives the motivations and intentions of the episode's villain more of a weight. In the pilot, Sherlock fucking around trying to be clever gets him captured by the cab driver, who figures out that he's been found out and drugs him. You even get a cool exchange setting up Sherlock's previous drug problems.
Do a lot of drugs, Sherlock Holmes?
Not in a while.
I ask because you're very resilient. Most people would have passed out by now.
This is far better at setting up Sherlock's drug stuff than having the cops be at his place looking for drugs and mentioning he used to have a problem, and then he walks out and gets into the cab. It's like a fucking Mad Libs Chinese telephone version of the plot of the pilot. It's so dumb. A thing to keep in mind about the pilot is that it's only an hour long. I have this theory that almost any story could be improved if, once the creator came to you and said they thought it was done, you forced them to take out maybe 10-15%. It forces them to reassess the importance of what's on the screen and remove indulgences that don't really add anything. For example, this section in the script begins with like a 10-minute ramble about the importance of the original stories, but then I decided to rewrite that bit to be a 1/10 of the length, and that turned out to be way better. The pilot seems to demonstrate this happening in reverse, where the full show was given an extra half an hour, so they thought, oh great, that gives us time to insert the co-writer of the show's character early and have intrigue that doesn't go anywhere because he turns out to be like just a normal guy who's worried about his brother, and also connect a nice and simple first story to Moriarty for no reason. I'll here restate my previous point that Moffat is a decent writer who would be best utilized in one-off episodes with strong direction and oversight by others, and not directly in charge of running an entire show based on one of the most well-known properties in British history, like in Doctor Who or in Jekyll. Oh, you thought I'd forgotten about Jekyll, didn't you, Steve? Well, I can't blame you. Most people have. Jekyll is an adaptation of / sequel thing to The Strange Case of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, made in 2007 with Moffat writing all of it and executive produced by Moffat, Catherine Mitchell, and Moffat's mother-in-law. Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde is, behind Doctor Who and Sherlock Holmes, maybe the one other really big English pop cultural character we have. Can we stop giving these to him, please? It's 6 episodes, and it's quite bad. It's very bad in some places and surprisingly okay in others, but it exhibits all the same problems as Moffat's work on Doctor Who and Sherlock, so it's worth bringing up as an example of the wider problems with Moffat's writing. The most noticeable and informative thing about the show is its pacing. The show opens very strongly, with Dr. Jackman, aware that he has a condition where he manifests a very strong and dangerous personality and working to manage it. We open in media res with someone else being introduced to his techniques. When I first saw this show, I couldn't be happier that Moffat didn't write the 3 previous episodes worth of plot he could have written leading into this room showing Jackman getting his condition and becoming aware of it and working to try and find a way around it. Finding out exactly how the transformation works and the state of his life and the people in it over the course of the first episode is mostly great, excluding the bad writing and editing in some places, but it ends super strong with the viewer interested in what's going to happen next, with Hyde learning that Jackman has a family he's been keeping secret from him, and Jackman getting pretty pissed about that.
Come to my family again, and you and I are at war.
It's a good pilot, and it sells you on the story and the conceit of the transformation very well. The first episode's clever in places, like with Hyde initially not having a name and deciding to call himself Billy after kicking a guy's ass and deciding to literally take his name. Then it gets more intriguing with him meeting someone who addresses him as Mr. Hyde and referring openly to the actual story the show's based on. It's a clever twist. You start out thinking the show's a modern reimagining of the story, but then it turns out no, the original book still exists. It's genuinely entertaining watching the cogs turn and the narrative do unexpected things like that. But after the first episode, the show immediately begins to fall apart. It turns out that the Jekyll in the original stories was a real person who also existed and had the same condition as Jackman, and also they exactly resemble each other. There's also a secret organization bent on making super soldiers out of Hyde's advanced physiology, a mystery regarding how Jackman came to exist because Jekyll died a virgin. Henry Jekyll didn't have any air. Do you get it? An unrelated mystery about human cloning that sort of comes in out of nowhere and, by the way, isn't the resolution of the why Jackman exists and looks exactly like Jekyll plot, because Moffat felt like being clever. Hyde starts screaming, "Why am I not a Superman?" like a tiny baby, and Jackman and Hyde merge their personalities, and all the electricity turns off and he has mind powers, and for some reason a bunch of characters and lines that could have been ripped whole cloth from coupling start turning up in this horror drama 4 episodes in. But the show even commits, in my opinion based on what I liked about it, the cardinal sin. It shows the backstory. The 4th episode is almost entirely long flashbacks showing Jackman gaining the condition and starting to discover it and figure out how to manage it. That's right. Moffat starts in media res, smartly skipping explaining an origin story that's not necessary for getting to the interesting bits that take place in the first episode, and then goes back to explain it. The show ends with Jackman's mother, who has appeared intermittently, suddenly transforming into the lady who runs the organization that's trying to study Hyde. It's a twist intended to set up a 2nd series and its own deeper mysteries or whatever, but the show was cancelled, so we'll never find out what happens next, why Jackman's mother's alter ego was trying to study Hyde in the first place, given she could have just studied herself, why Jekyll is so goddamn important, or how the company got so big and rich and powerful over the course of 100 years when it's run by a woman who couldn't for more than 60 of them, and all their money was revealed to have come from studying imperfect clones of Jekyll, and their cloning was only achieved in the 50s, so how did they get the riches required to learn to fucking clone humans before then? And it turns out that love is what made Jekyll become Hyde in the first place, because there is no potion, so they even ruined the premise of the original fucking book! Most importantly, the key word I would associate with Jekyll is promise. Jekyll has, for all its faults, a very strong pilot episode, and honestly, Moffat should just write pilot episodes for the rest of his life and then hand the rest of the series off to other writers to play on the interesting ideas he brings up and then abandons while trying to be smart, or outsmart the source material. Moffat desperately needs people slapping his wrists away from the keyboard when he decides to write an episode of backstory to a show that started strong specifically by not having any. So we're left with 2 pilots penned by Moffat, which both promise really interesting and good shows and work basically all the way through on their own level, but then the actual shows in question fail to live up to any of those ideas. Also, I kind of have to bring this up, the editing of the show is pretty bad, but it's clear the editors were given very little to work with. Most of the fights happen off-screen. Here's the scene where Hyde throws a guy out a window.
Cheers.
They play a glass smashing sound effect before cutting, and then it cuts to him getting off the ground. They simply didn't shoot the money shot of this scene of the guy actually getting thrown through the window. The editor had to really stretch the shots they had to make the scene have any continuity whatsoever. And you can almost feel the editor's anger at whoever decided not to shoot most of the interesting events called for in the script. By far the funniest part of the show is this outtake an editor left in that nobody seemed to notice, where Hyde uses his superpowers to pull out a book of matches and light one out of nowhere, but Nesbit accidentally flings the entire pack directly into his face and eyes. They try and cut away, but all they can cut to is this other angle of him doing the same thing. It's like, wow, do you have a take where he doesn't throw the matches into his face? No? Oh well, we have to go with this then. Actually, considering the way a lot of the show plays out and the lack of coverage everywhere else, I'm willing to bet they didn't even shoot a second take at all. I've spent so long labouring on Jekyll, well, partially because I watched 6 hours of it preparing for this video and wanted to justify the wasted time, but also because it's very much a blueprint for a lot of the mistakes in Sherlock's writing. What Moffat's really good at is telling single stories that have to start and then end conclusively, because you're never going to see most of these characters or even this planet again. You can't just set up the next season with a hackneyed cliffhanger or whatever. You have to end the story satisfyingly.
It needs a big, strong idea every week. I think you know you've got a good idea for a Doctor Who story if you think, well, I've just blown that feature film idea forever, haven't I? Right. That's the size of story that you can get you through 45 minutes of Doctor Who.
Compare and contrast the writing of this scene from The Empty Child in Season 1. The Doctor follows a mysterious mauve object through time as it crashes on Earth, and assuming it would have made an impression, decides to ask the locals if they've seen something fall from the sky.
Might seem like a stupid question. Anything fallen from the sky recently?
That's a weird response. He doesn't get it, and neither do you. What's going on? And then an air raid siren goes off, and he sees the wartime posters, and you go, oh, it's the war. This is a clever and simple setup and reveal. Over the course of the episode and the second part, we learn what the ship was, what it does, what's happened in London, and by the end of these 2 episodes you have a complete picture of what happened and why. Also, a guy's face gets turned into a gas mask by nanomachines, and it's the scariest thing anyone my age has ever seen in their entire lives. There's good writing and a good story here, with a conclusion that feels earned. Moffat's supposedly famous for writing the more dark episodes, but at the end of this one, everyone who has died comes back to life.
Everybody lives, Rose. Just this once. Everybody lives!
Like, he unkills people, and yet the tone carries it, makes it feel dark even then. That's just how good he is when he's given a single story to tell.
Right, you lot! Lots to do! Beat the Germans, save the world, don't forget the welfare state!
But when Moffat has to write the whole series and manage the wider progression, you start to see holes. Things start being implied that sound deep, seem like they might be going somewhere, but actually don't. His first season starts with the Doctor finding a crack in space and time on the bedroom wall of a girl he happens to run into, and then the cracks keep turning up and a piece of the TARDIS comes through one. Where did the cracks come from? Keep watching and maybe you'll find out. Then it turns out they come from the TARDIS exploding at the end of the season. But why did the TARDIS explode? Keep watching and maybe you'll find out. Oh, the silence did it? Maybe? I'm still not clear. Why did they do it? Well, keep watching and maybe you'll find... Oh, they did it because there's a prophecy that silence must fall when the question is asked. Who made this prophecy and what the hell does it mean? Keep watching for yet another fucking season and maybe... It also feels like Moffat really did use up all his feature film ideas, because he brings back the Weeping Angels for a 2-part episode and then they come back again later, even more. In the first series, which is still my favourite, they would have the Doctor do something shitty like torture a Dalek, and he would have to confront himself that episode and get better as a person. Say what you want about Russell T Davies, but under his watch almost every episode would feel involving because characters would change or grow or have to actually confront and deal with something about themselves.
Why don't you finish the job and make the Daleks extinct? Rid the universe of your filth! Why don't you just die?
You would make a good Dalek.
This episode explores the Doctor's anger at the Daleks and shows it's an expression of seeing his entire race die in a war with them. Over the course of this episode, he has to confront these feelings in ways he hasn't let himself and grow as a person. It's a really small change, but we get to see it happen, and it's good. In contrast, here's a superficially similar scene in a Moffat-run season in an episode co-written by Moffat.
You are a good Dalek.
This happens at the end of an episode. The purpose of this scene is to tell you that the Doctor is full of hatred. Not so we can deal with that hatred being there in the actual story of the episode or explore these emotions in more detail, but to make you watch the next episode to see if maybe they'll eventually deal with the interesting thing they brought up and did nothing with.
I see into your soul, Doctor. I see hatred.
Oh, I've looked into your soul. I see hatred, Doctor. Hatred that a future episode might eventually fucking deal with and be interesting.
Do you have it in you to murder me?
Did he push you out of that thing? Or did you fall? Couldn't really tell. He can be very mean sometimes.
We get it. The Doctor's an ambiguous character now. Are you going to explore that in more detail, or are you just going to keep telling us that? For all his flaws, Davies tried to make each episode have a satisfying, complete story and arc for its characters.
I'm the only one left. I win. How about that?
Moffat, as a showrunner, tries to make each episode imply something satisfying is maybe gonna happen eventually. You can have all the fantastic premises you like, shrinking yourself down to go inside a Dalek to do surgery, having a sword fight with Robin Hood with a spoon, having to go on a space bank heist with strangers, whatever. But if most of the time the conclusion is, wow, you've got some anger, Doctor, I bet a future episode might bother to deal with it, those episodes are wasting a lot of their potential. Again, this is something Moffat grasped excellently when he was writing one-off episodes. Blink starred characters that were never seen before and haven't been seen since, but it has a complete emotional arc for its main characters over the course of one episode. It doesn't end with someone saying, wow, you have problems you probably ought to deal with at some point, tune in next week to see if we do. The problem is, when you come down to it, Doctor Who is about visiting other worlds and going on fun adventures. Moffat made it all about the Doctor. In much the same way, the Sherlock Holmes stories are about solving crimes and fun mysteries and figuring things out using deductive reasoning. Moffat made his show all about Sherlock. Sherlock is too important, too special, too powerful, and this ruins the tension of the show and our ability to empathise with the character. The entire show is dedicated to telling you about Sherlock instead of showing you Sherlock by way of his interaction with the actual plot. Season 1 was the only season that came close to getting this right, where you learned what sort of person he was and his abilities based on how he used them in the episode. As the show progresses, the actual mystery, the crimes we're supposed to have fun watching Sherlock solve, take a backseat to the show telling us how cool and wacky Sherlock is and his mind battle with Moriarty. In this episode in Season 3, there's a huge setup just for Sherlock being weird. They spend a pretty sizable portion of the runtime and budget for a quick joke about how rude and thoughtless Sherlock is, where Lestrade is gearing up to capture someone who's clearly been a problem with him for a long time.
I have to go. Do you know any funny stories about John?
They could have just made him rude and thoughtless over the course of the plot of the actual fucking episode. The punchline of these jokes is supposed to set up something regarding the principal characters, but they do it so poorly and in such a roundabout way that they're neither funny nor really tell us anything new. We should already know Sherlock is a big inconsiderate piece of shit because Moffat has been writing him as one for 3 seasons at this point. This kind of overindulgent nonsense is antithetical to actually telling an interesting story. Nothing remotely like this would have happened in the short stories because they actually had a story worth telling and wanted to get to it. Cumulatively, stuff like this reduces the entire show to Sherlock prancing around showing off how smart and or rude he is, and very occasionally pausing to do something.
I'll get hung for this.
No, Mr. Pierrick, not at all. Hanged? Yes.
Sherlock corrects a guy's grammar a bunch for the first 2 minutes of this episode and then walks away. This doesn't serve the story at all, except to tell us that Sherlock doesn't like when you say words wrong. Which is, an admirable character trait, obviously. Fuck that guy, he deserves to die even if he didn't do the murder. But it's really not something so pivotal as to be the start of an episode. It's a show about solving crimes. The episode should be starting with a crime, a thing happens that piques your interest, like the first 2 episodes did. But by the time of the 3rd episode, we open on Sherlock being shitty, dramatically walking out and the credits go, and then we cut to Sherlock being shitty in his house for another 3 minutes.
It's ahead.
Ooh, there's a head in the fridge, how wacky. The actual start of the episode's fucking plot is at around 6 minutes 20 seconds when someone suddenly attacks the house out of nowhere with a bomb. Everything leading up to that is Sherlock being bored and smarmy and literally waiting around for the plot to come and get him. Now this characterization isn't utterly terrible. We do have a strong sense that Sherlock is a dick, but the problem with this is that in effect the entire show is bent towards providing characterization for Sherlock and making the story he's interacting with take a back seat until it becomes convenient. In the actual books and many of the adaptations, Sherlock Holmes was not the real focal point. The mystery at hand and the other characters were equally as important, and the point was the way Sherlock interacted with them to help solve the case. Let's take the very first story, A Study in Scarlet. Sherlock, while examining the body, refers to pre-existing events he's clearly studied, and actively recommends others do the same. Instead of simply telling everyone how smart he is, he makes a tangible reference to a piece of information that could be relevant. We're seeing his reasoning in action. We're also getting strong characterization while the plot moves forward of Sherlock checking the body and making comments that teach us about Sherlock and about the case. Characterization and story are happening at the same time and not in separate segments for the first 6 minutes before the story decides to start. Lestrade assumes R-A-C-H-E written in blood on a wall are meant to say Rachel, and the killer was disturbed before they could finish writing, and that someone called Rachel therefore has something to do with the case. That's all he gets from this scene, the assumption that these words might say Rachel, which it turns out they don't. Sherlock looks at this scene and deduces, for example, the approximate height of the person who wrote the message based on where it had made sense for them to write the letters. Something no one else in the room thought to observe or consider, but something that you could absolutely arrive at yourself. This is a tangible piece of information that you yourself could apply to real life. Sherlock just taught you how to figure out how tall someone is based on how they would naturally write on a wall or the length of the stride of their footprints. This characterization is very strong because it gets across that Sherlock is smart, but also why he's smart, what he did to learn the things he learned, and got across the point of the scene, which is to demonstrate the use of his analytical techniques. For comparison, there's a scene in the first Sherlock episode, A Study in Pink, ooh, do you get it? How clever! Where Sherlock goes to a crime scene clearly based on the one from Scarlet. Rach here is written by the victim, and it actually turns out that she really is trying to write the name Rachel, because knowing German, I guess, is too much to expect of an audience. This isn't necessarily a bad change. What is a bad change is what information Sherlock learns and how he learns it. We're shown Sherlock inspecting the body and instead making the conclusion, based on the inside of a dirty wedding ring being clean, that the woman is a serial adulterer. This actually doesn't have very much impact on the story whatsoever, it's just the writers finding a way to be clever by having Sherlock derive an entire sexual history from a ring. He then realizes something no one else notices and dramatically runs off, screaming, "Pink!" This is tonally utterly wrong. Instead of being given tangible explanations and the intrigue coming from deciding what to do next with the information in order to catch the killer, you're told to assume someone's marriage is failing because their ring is dirty, and that Sherlock knows something you don't and has just run off to deal with it himself. The tone here is utter confusion. Sherlock's smart because he figured something out, but we're not going to say what, or how, or why. Just for contrast, the first time we see CBS's Elementary's Sherlock on a crime scene, he discovers a hidden room by feeling the incline of the floor with his feet.
The extra weight of a safe room steel reinforcements can cause the floor around it to decline slightly, creating a slope between 1 and 5 degrees.
This thing with the marble is clever and based on quite simple available information, like that big armoured panic rooms are heavy. It's not rocket science, but it's a believable deduction, and it did just teach you an actual real-life way of finding hidden panic rooms. This show might not be perfect, but at least they solve crimes using information they detected, like detectives would. This early scene is the best analysis in the show you're gonna get, too. You are shown pieces of information that lead to a conclusion. For example, he recognises that she would have had to have a suitcase with her because of splash marks, which the viewer's even shown and has a chance to figure out for themselves before Sherlock explains it.
But in most investigations after this one, Sherlock starts either making wild assumptions that don't have any basis in reality, or straight up learns key information the viewer isn't even told about.
In episode 2, Sherlock assumes a man found with a gunshot on the right side of his head couldn't be self-inflicted because he was left-handed.
The wound's on the right side of his head. And? Bancoom is left-handed. Requires quite a bit of contortion.
This isn't even a solid assumption. In practice, plenty of left-handed people use their other hand for firearms so that the kickback of the weapon doesn't potentially injure the hand you use for writing with, including, say, for example, John Watson.
being... In episode 3, Sherlock has to figure out how a TV personality lady was poisoned. He sends Watson to the lady's house, and we get scenes of him checking stuff out, and Sherlock starting to watch a few episodes and check the internet for theories. The characters meet up, and Sherlock just sort of throws out there that the houseboy who is in a relationship with the lady's brother probably poisoned her in revenge for mistreatment of the brother on TV based on all the research he did off screen. All we see of this research is her patting him a little bit too hard on the back. Sherlock proves this theory by having a toxicology report come in and show it was botulinum toxin, and that the houseboy's job was to give her Botox, and that he knows he's been bulk ordering it.
My contact at the Home Office gave me the complete records of Raoul's internet purchases. He's been bulk ordering Botox for months. Bided his time, then up the strength to a fatal dose.
That's right. In a show about solving crimes and giving the viewer a sense of unfolding mystery, and maybe giving them some information so they can try and figure it out themselves as they go, so, you know, their brain is engaged, Sherlock solves the crime off-screen using information the viewer's never shown, or even has a chance to deduce for themselves. He just comes out of nowhere and reveals it was Botox, and that he has a friend with the power to find out people's internet purchases and share them with him. The ability to be intelligent in finding and interpreting available information is replaced with a superpower where he holds all the cards and knows more than the viewer possibly could, rendering the experience of trying to follow the story roughly similar to trying to figure out where a car is driving while there's a bag over your head and Stephen Moffat is punching you and insisting he's being clever. In this same episode, based on a guard being found dead who works in a gallery, he immediately then arrives at the conclusion that a recent painting unveiled there has to be fake, because why else would anyone ever be killed? And then concludes, based on circumstantial evidence, that a well-known legendary hitman we've never heard of before must have done it.
One of the deadliest assassins in the world. That is his trademark style.
And then someone off-screen finds out where he is, and then they go to where he is.
Any time you want to explain? Homeless network really is indispensable.
Like, all the deduction and thinking isn't done in a way that is actually interesting or fun for the viewer to see. How would a person track this hitman? How would you find out where he is? That's an interesting story. They skip over it. Sherlock literally hires someone else to do it. And they do all of this so that Sherlock and Watson have an excuse to run around chasing a really tall guy and then having a wrestle with him. You know, yeah, the original stories were fantastic and groundbreaking pieces of literature about solving mysteries, but what they really could have done was a bit where the main characters wrestle a tall guy for a while. I'll say again that the show does start out better, and lots of season 1 does feature some genuine deduction based on information the viewer's also shown, but you can see the slip starting to happen here. The deductive reasoning a superior show would be centrally about is replaced with a conjuring trick where you're told later how clever Sherlock was, and then he tells you about all the other stuff you didn't even know about that led him to it. In The Hounds of Baskerville, Sherlock intentionally tries to drug Watson with what he thinks is sugar that's had a hallucinogen added to it, based on how he thinks he's been drugged, and it's the only thing they didn't both consume. The fact it's the one thing they haven't both eaten or drunk isn't established until after Watson has been given the sugar and started hallucinating. The purpose of this part appears to be to make Sherlock look clever for knowing something we didn't even have the chance to think about for ourselves. Also, he could have just tested the sugar instead of trying to drug his friend with an unknown chemical to see what would happen and then testing it later, only to discover the sugar is clean. You can even imagine a better, smarter show having a section where the two stop and think about everything they've eaten, maybe even cutting back to scenes of everything they ate that we already saw because they could have had scenes of them doing that as other stuff happened, and eliminating everything except the sugar, then testing it in the lab and discovering that it's normal. Instead, all this information is excised on purpose so you can have the mystery, of Sherlock maybe drugging his only friend, and fill some precious time as Watson hides in the lab from an imaginary dog for 5 whole minutes. The story it would have made sense to tell is just too normal for Moffat and Gatiss. The real focus is what wacky or cool thing Sherlock will personally do, and then how he'll justify it later using bullshit, instead of being on the piece of evidence or information and the proper approach to finding it and acting on it. This conveniently lets the writers off the hook for ever having to deal with things like character traits or motivation or choices. When you read a chapter of a Sherlock Holmes story, you feel like you've gotten a little bit smarter. It feels weird to say out loud, but often it's like you've personally seen the benefit of a certain way of looking at the world. Sherlock has the strongest characterization in the show, but in effect it's too strong, pulling the focus away from things that actually make watching him do stuff interesting, like the other characters and their lives and the mysteries he's solving. This is a gigantic problem in both storytelling and characterization. A lot of the original stories were only a few pages long. There wasn't enough time to mythologize what a badass Sherlock was, because there was crime to solve. The 90-minute format of the show seemingly gives the creators too much time. Hell, the pilot was better because they didn't have that extra 30 minutes to shoehorn in the Mycroft stuff, and then tie it all into Moriarty, because why not make it all about him too? Speaking of which... If you thought the show's obsession with Sherlock was too much, wait until you get a load of Moriarty. The entire Sherlock world has been almost completely absorbed into the all-encompassing plans of some guy who was in 2 of the many dozens of original stories. After being suddenly inserted into the first 2 episodes to let you know he's coming so you have something to keep watching for, because the writing and mystery solving certainly can't be doing that for you, episode 3's all weird mind games explicitly for Sherlock by Moriarty. It's all about a big smart baddie messing with Sherlock, but in a really boring way, where he holds all the cards and Sherlock never actually outsmarts him, just solves his puzzles, but he solves them off screen or using magic mind powers, so it's a struggle we don't even get to see. There's also the problem of him being relentlessly queer-coded.
Okay.
But the flirting's over, Sherlock. Daddy's had enough now.
Seriously, this guy's just the fucking most.
Do you like my boys? This one's got more stamina, but he's less caring in the afterglow.
What are you doing, Andrew? Oh boy, do you get it? He's a queen? Oh, fuck you, Steve. Like, I get it, he's really into Sherlock, and the writers imply this means he wants to do the fuck on him. But, like, why? What does this add to the narrative?
Moriarty is usually a rather dull, rather posh villain, so we thought someone who was genuinely, properly frightening, someone who's an absolute psycho. Moffat, okay. Number 1, absolute psycho, make him act like a gay, great, that's really fucking comforting of you, thank you. Number 2, Moriarty is dull and posh? One of the most memorable fucking characters in, like, the history of literature? Oh yeah, he needs to be fixed. We need to make him into the fucking loudest, shoutingest, prancingest, weirdest, most over-the-top guy ever. Just, you know, because we really needed to fucking fix Jesus Christ.
Moriarty is self-consciously a villain. He knows what he's doing. He's a nutcase.
He knows what he's doing and he's a nutcase? Mark, those things don't...
See, he's an absolute psycho, which means the creators can have him do anything, even contradictory things like threaten Sherlock to try and keep him away and do everything he can to protect his identity, and needlessly play with Sherlock up to and including fucking just killing himself just to mess with his head. And they don't have to justify any of it, because he's a complete psycho. It doesn't have to make any sense. We don't have to write a cohesive character. He's mad, and that's it. That's all you're gonna get. Fuck you! At the end of season 1/beginning of 2, he threatens them, leaves, realizes he should probably kill them, comes back in to do it, then changes his mind again once the cliffhanger's over and season 2 starts. What's the lesson here? Also, why does he come back in? He could have just said, hey snipers, just kill him. The villain is practically all-powerful, doesn't kill Sherlock for the sake of the fun of messing with him, and Sherlock never ever gets the upper hand or surprises him because he's so ridiculously smart. This makes the conflict have no real weight for the viewer and thereby render it pointless. Moriarty always holds all the cards and knows more than Sherlock does.
Boring. I could have got them anywhere.
In the books, when he's tracking down other criminals, and of course Moriarty, Sherlock has to try very hard not to get murdered, and in the original novel, literally does, because Moriarty and himself end up shuffling off the Reichenbach Falls together. In this version, Moriarty literally doesn't want Sherlock dead, and he doesn't really care about his crime empire because he shoots himself in the head simply as a ploy to mess with him. He's just fucking around with an impossibly genius-level intellect to seemingly no end, except literally his own. Sometimes he's a pragmatic mastermind who'll do anything to protect even the vaguest sliver of his identity, like have this lady murdered, or detonate the bombs on the old woman when she tries to tell Sherlock he sounded nice.
If you don't stop prying, I'll burn you. I will burn the heart out of you.
Why not just burn him anyway? Why make this allowance for the one man who actually stands a chance of ever catching you? Oh, because he's crazy, so we don't have to justify it. He's crazy.
The original Moriarty shows up in 2 stories, is formidable, and wants Sherlock dead for fucking with him, and the two die in mortal combat trying to kill each other, although Sherlock is eventually revealed to have survived after a full decade of readers being convinced he was dead. This Moriarty runs seemingly all crime, everywhere, will go to great lengths to protect his identity, but is also so fascinated by Sherlock he'll literally kill himself to see what he does, while gay-baiting the fuck out of him so Tumblr will give it some shipping attention. Then, when Sherlock dies to stop his plans, 10 minutes later it turns out Sherlock isn't dead because the writers can't even trust you to wait for the next season because they're rightfully worried you'd lose interest in this garbage if the story felt too conclusive. He kills himself because I guess they wanted him to do something surprising.
The most essential thing about Moriarty for me is that you don't know what you're going to get on the day, that he has to be completely surprising.
So they had him do the stupidest fucking thing possible. The only way this could be stupider is if, right before he shot himself in the head for no reason, he told Sherlock he was going to come back for every season finale afterwards as an increasingly stupid and bullshit fake-out, or that Sherlock has a secret sister he magically forgot about, and also a mega super double secret old best friend who he remembers as a dog for some reason, and who the sister killed. That would be really stupid, wouldn't it? But Moriarty's shitty characterization doesn't end there. After the big twist in season 2 that there is no secret all-powerful hacking technology...
No. This is too easy. This is too easy. There is no key. You don't really think a couple of lines of computer code are going to crash the world around our ears? I'm disappointed in you.
It turns out that it does exist, because this happens. They were worried people would stop watching if there was no Moriarty to fight, and they just killed the other quite well-known villain, so they had to make sure they implied he was coming back, because if everything doesn't tie into Moriarty, there's basically no story here. He doesn't actually come back either. This turns out to just be, like... I think this turns out to be a plot hole. Like, who did this in the end? Did someone who works for Moriarty do it? Did he set this up to happen long after his death? Did Eurus do it? After teasing everyone into thinking he's going to come back, and having an entire special dedicated to figuring out that yes, he's dead, but he must just have some other plans going, it just keeps turning out to not have anything to do with him, and the plot continues on as if Moriarty wasn't around. Then, in the worst episode of all time, it turns out before he died, Moriarty met Sherlock's secret sister and provided video recordings to use in some bullshit thing she pulls for him for no reason other than she's crazy. Woo! Nice one, Steve. You got out of having to characterize yet another villain. At least you didn't make this one gay. Oh, and at the very end of the show this happens.
Surprise. You didn't think I'd just disappear, did you?
Now, provided the show actually gets another season, baiting people with the return of Moriarty yet again, after all this time establishing he's definitely dead, is absolutely taking the piss, and I don't even want to know about a prospective season 5 or what that would look like, because I have no idea how the show could possibly get any worse, so instead I'm gonna just move on. Another thing Sherlock has is a style problem. It's clear the production crew were given a vastly higher budget than the majority of British television normally gets, and you can see why. Except for Doctor Who, QI, British Bake Off, Come Dine With Me, and The Legacy of Colonialism, Britain has virtually no remaining cultural exports, so it makes sense for the BBC to invest heavily in the TV adaptation of one of our most important cultural icons, so people think we're still relevant as a nation. Unfortunately, it doesn't seem like anyone really knew what to do with that money, so consequently the show is overproduced to the point where it only gets in the way. The show is trying at every moment to be the coolest, most important thing in the entire world, and it has the time and money to execute on this, which isn't necessarily a good thing. The most obvious way this features is the text that comes up whenever Sherlock's doing his magic mind powers, or whenever someone gets a message on their phone and appears on screen in a cool visual way. This makes sense, and so do things like having images be wiped by people moving through them or doors closing and stuff. That's just nice editing, and it does help scenes flow together easier. This is a vast improvement on Jekyll, which appears to have been rushed and had no budget, so you get stuff like Hyde's super strength being shown off by having them just fast forward footage of James Nesbitt walking normally, or this shot.
You can see the bones of the style Moffat and the production team of Sherlock finally get the budget to actually make, but it just doesn't work. This is meant to be Hyde drinking a lot of alcohol very quickly because of his advanced metabolism and unexplained superpowers, but it just looks like a guy drinking in fast forward, and the sound effects just make it silly. A lot of the special effects in scenes that are meant to be scary are just Dutch angles and shaky cam with undercrank and weird filters. Sherlock's enhanced budget and scope of production allows it to pull off versions of this without looking as terrible. When Sherlock's using his mind powers, because let's be honest, that's basically what they are, the soundtrack swells and all kinds of cool sound effects are used to get across his sheer attentiveness. Here, for example, because she was scraping the ground with her nails, as the text appears you hear a nail scraping sound. Giving the text a sound effect as it writes itself in helps draw your attention to it, make it pop.
Matching the numbers, you've been over the last 4 digits yourself and another pen, so you wanted to keep the number. Just now they used the napkin to blow your nose. Maybe you're not that into her after all.
They use pen drawing and nose sniffling noises when he talks about those, and you can even see they animate the images as it happens. They do this because they think you're an idiot and don't understand what writing with a pen means, so you need both visual and audio cues. This use of images and sound effects is very effective. It helps trick the viewer into thinking they're doing more than watching Benedict Cumberbatch sit in a chair and tell you about things he's noticed. In a way, I wouldn't really recommend analysing this show too much. I must mention that paying attention to sound and visuals causes the show's trick to start to wear thin very quickly.
Like? The wound's on the right side of his head. And? Van Koon's coffee mug handle to the left. Should he use the ones on the left? Pen and pen because he picked it up with his right and took down messages with his on the breadboard with butter on the right. Matched just the shirt with the trousers. They're pretty full.
At its best, you get intense scenes where the level of thinking being done by Sherlock is highlighted and you're put into his mind with these extreme close-ups and pauses, seeing the world how this mega genius sees it for brief spurts, and it's all very stylish. At its worst, this style is a stupid nonsense mess that ends up being needless or just straight up silly. Bing! I swear to God, I didn't edit that in. This tonally dissonant nightmare doesn't put us in Sherlock's mind and doesn't even show us his trail of thought. It's just text and images flying past the screen with weird sound effects. This is the sort of thing I would do for a quick joke, not the dramatic investigation scene.
You ain't nothing.
The show is so dedicated to this amped up over-the-top style that it applies it to places that are incredibly poorly served by it. My favourite examples are in the wedding episode. Firstly, you have this bizarre montage of Sherlock and Watson getting drunk, set to a fucking atrocious dubstep remix of the show's theme, with a blurry vignette over it because that's what alcohol does. Intersected with ultra-fast graphs of their night out, and you're like, whoa, wait, I didn't even see that. What? This is the most overproduced pub crawl in the history of television. But the bestest example ever is earlier in the episode, when you have the wedding photographer taking the gang's pictures.
Okay, 3, 2, 1, cheese!
The music swells, you get this cool time-frozen effect and all that. This shot was quite difficult to pull off. I know someone who worked on this episode. They had to build a giant rig with dozens of DSLRs all at precise positions and angles and focal distances. This is a cool technique two of my favourite directors, the Wachowskis, pioneered for The Matrix. In theory, this is a nice set of shots, right? But there's a difference between theory and practice. What is happening in these shots? How is the story being furthered? What action is being exacerbated by executing the scene with this technique? It's a few brief, elaborate, expensive shots of people getting their picture taken at a wedding. The Wachowskis only used this technique in the most intense moments of some of the most dramatic and well-edited action scenes in film history, where a single second decompressed during a life or death moment has maximum payoff. I don't know which Burke saw this scene and thought, oh, let's do that, but for the scene where everyone's standing still. But whoever they were, they should have been fired. But I guess, since the writers accidentally wrote an episode mostly consisting of Sherlock farting about at a wedding, I guess they decided they had to blow the budget on something. By golly, I wonder who produced this show. Oh. Is this a purposeful reference to The Matrix? Like, it wouldn't be the first time they did that. They did that thing at the beginning with the 2 pills. What's the deal with these references? Alright, if you take this pill, you wake up in your bed and the Sherlock TV series was never made, it was all a bad dream. If you take this pill, you have to watch all of it again.
Oh, cool. What do you want me to return? Do I need to, like, suck your dick or something?
What? No, I'm gonna shoot you if you don't take either pill, but you've got to take one. That's all.
Really? Wow, you just talked yourself out of a sweet deal, mister.
Oh.
Sign me the fuck up, sailor.
I forgot where I was going with this bit, I'm sorry. This kind of attitude to production can be bad for creativity. Throwing all the money ever at every scene means you get shots like this getting in the way of the story, and supposedly tense moments of Sherlock trying to figure something out are ruined by flinging random images and sound effects at the audience in the name of production value. This is the one lesson I'd have expected Moffat to have learned by now. You see, one thing Doctor Who was quite famous for was shooting for expensive ideas and concepts so often, with such tight schedules, that it becomes necessary for there to be episodes where the main characters don't make too much of an appearance and there aren't too many effects or expensive props. Within these constraints, Moffat himself wrote Blink, one of the most universally loved episodes of the show, where the Doctor and Martha barely show up and the monsters literally don't even move, creating some incredibly tense moments out of almost no budget whatsoever. Such as this sphincter tightening scene of a light starting to flicker, and perhaps the most incredibly engaging piece of drama in the entire show, where a character's arguing with a pre-recorded message of the Doctor that knows what they're about to say.
How can you have a copy of the finished transcript? It's still being written.
I told you I'm a time traveller. I got it in the future.
Blink won a ton of awards, and I feel proves with its efficient execution on time and budget constraints that sometimes limitations can be good for creativity. I didn't really believe that old aphorism until I saw Sherlock and realised that if you give people too much money, they do shit like this instead of tell an engaging story. This production style leads to characters being underused because they have so little to do, because the focus is on overproducing the scenes where Sherlock does stuff and other random bullshit instead of making them a decent addition to the story. This problem even extends to the second principal character, John Watson. Watson sucks and has no purpose in this version of the story. Mary Watson. No, seriously. After shooting the baddie at the end of episode 1, Watson has nothing to do and spends most of his time getting treated like shit by his friend for no reason and running around next to him while he solves everything. Watson is the point of view character, the literal narrator for most of the Holmes stories, and he barely even gets to see plenty of the events of the plot. What else does he do? Oh, one time he gets kidnapped and Sherlock has to save him. Oh, another time, he gets mysteriously kidnapped, and Sherlock has to, one time, he starts a fire? Oh, and technically he's there sometimes while Sherlock figures stuff out. He's also here for, this fight, I guess. Oh, and also there's the time when, he gets kidnapped and Sherlock has to save him. One time he gets held at gunpoint and Sherlock, one time he gets held at gunpoint. I just made my ears ring, slapping my face. Jesus Christ. Fuck you, Steve. And oh my god, did you see Watson in the background for this exciting scene? Literally the most important thing Watson does in all of season 2 is watch Sherlock die. The wedding episode has a bit where Sherlock tells us Watson is a good doctor and a really helpful ally and provides anecdotes of times he did stuff useful to a case. Wouldn't it have been great if Watson's skills had come in handy in the episodes of the show that were actually made, and not the ones they wrote as backstory for this wedding? The guy's a doctor and a war survivor and the POV character for most of the books, and he's barely even a presence at his own fucking wedding, dedicated to Sherlock's hour-long speech supposedly about him, but really about how smart Sherlock is for figuring out a crime during a speech. Fuck off. Mary Watson. John's wife is a minor character in some of the books and not super important, but his relationship with his wife does come up in interesting ways, usually in order to make points about the limited roles of women in British society in the time the story was set. In the show, she just sort of appears between seasons 2 and 3, the episode after that is their wedding, although don't worry, we all know who that episode's really about, and then the next episode after that she turns out to be a secret ninja assassin. Then in the next episode, not counting the special because the bulk of it takes place in Sherlock's imagination and she's not really in it, she dies. Mary lived a hugely interesting life and it would have made for a pretty cool addition to the story. Unfortunately, most of it happens in the same place most of the interesting stuff in the show happens. Off-screen. Then for some reason John sees her as a ghost for a bit, and then she gives the dumbest speech of all time about how mega special Holmes and Watson are, even though Watson doesn't do anything, and even she had more input on the events of the 4 episodes she had the privilege of being alive for. You've got to hand it to Moffat. He finally created a strong, smart, interesting female character, and then just when she was getting a chance to really interact with the story, he fucking kills her to create tension for the real main characters, Sherlock and whoever this guy is. What does he do? I think he got kidnapped a few times. Nice going, Steve. You fleshed out an actually clever addition to the main story just to kill her. Although I can see why that would be necessary. There's only so many important women in the original stories to ruin, aren't there? Speaking of which...
Okay, this is gonna be a kind of tough one to get into.
You see, in the pantheon of Sherlock Holmes, there are some characters who stick out so well because they're so unique or different or well written or special for the time period in which the stories were first made, that future adaptations can't help but lavish them with even more attention. You know, you would expect Moriarty to be made into this giant supervillain because, you know, even though he was only in 2 stories, one of them was the one that killed Sherlock Holmes for 10 years. That's a really good reason to stand out. Irene Adler makes it into almost every single adaptation there is of Sherlock Holmes, and she was in 1 story. The 3rd one ever. A Scandal in Bohemia.
Sherlock is approached by the King of Bohemia, who is about to get married to a princess and consolidate a shit ton of land and power, but 5 years ago he had a love affair with a controversial opera singer called Irene Adler and sent her love letters and a compromising photo, the original dick pic. And since the background of the picture clearly shows his My Little Pony collection, he's worried Adler will email it to his in-laws and the wedding will be called off and he'll lose out on a sweet deal.
Her Majesty has certainly committed an indiscretion.
The king offers Sherlock basically infinite money if he can get that stuff back, because none of his people have any idea where it's hidden. So you have a story in which Sherlock is covering up for a king's actions by stealing from an innocent woman who basically did nothing wrong. Sherlock and the king aren't the good guys here. Sherlock is dismissive about Adler. Sure, he can outsmart a woman. He knows what they're like. In disguise, Sherlock tricks Adler into revealing its location. But when he comes back later to get it, he discovers instead a letter telling him, "Nah, nice try, idiot," and finds she's married out of love for someone and left the country and just wants to move on with her life. Adler outsmarts Sherlock and gets away with it, which is more than can ever be said for almost anyone else in the entire series. And moreover, she disproves his reductive view of women while she does it. Sherlock loses and has to learn a lesson from it, and the viewer is shown that even the great detective is not immune to the biases of the culture he lives in. It's not a feminist story by modern standards, but for a story published by a man in the 1890s, it makes careful strides in showing that not only are women capable of being as smart as men, but if we don't get over the preconception that they can't be, they will win every time. Sherlock gains a grudging respect for her, not in a romantic way, but because he appreciates that he's been outsmarted.
What a queen she would have made. Is it not a pity she was not on my level? From what I have seen of the lady, yes, indeed, she is on a very different level to your Majesty.
In 2012,
Okay, I'm actually confused. Let me check first. Let me do a mic check first just to make sure. How far did that? Did I open my mic or not?
effective. It helps trick the viewer into thinking. In a way, our walls cause
Vancouver messages pretty formal.
I like genius. Trail of thought. It's just text and images. Scene. Literally the most important wedding. A crime during a speech. Fuck off. Mary Watson. Adler outsmart the
To your Majesty.
Okay, so my mic was off earlier. Okay, let me repeat what I said earlier. Sorry about that. That was embarrassing. So, so for this special event for me, I will be streaming every 2 days, once in every 2 days. So the next stream will be happening on the 3rd. Hopefully, I do not postpone it again. Okay. So, so tomorrow, hopefully, we already know what I'm going to be doing and anything like that. Okay. So sorry for tonight. Sorry for the boring stream for tonight. I will be seeing you next Tuesday, I guess. Yeah, I think it's no. Is it the first? No. This is the first. Yeah, Tuesday. So we're gonna be meeting you on Tuesday. Yeah. No. Wednesday. I'm sorry, Wednesday. Okay. So this is all for me. Good evening for those at the west east side of the world, and good afternoon to those at the west side of the world. This is the Bread and the Moon signing out. See you in the next stream. Bye.